Hello, Internet! It's Gino, that Pinguino Greco, here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And you know what this excitement means. It's Game of the Year time. Game of the Year. And I am joined, as always, by Billy the Holist Grain Rothert.
You know, good in, good out. That's about all I can say about that.
Look good, feel good, podcast good.
I mean, basically. And when you put in good games, you get out good podcasts. Unless you're playing Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam Guide.
We'll see. We'll see how that does in the final year-end rankings. And I am also joined by Peter the Fifth Harmony Busby.
Oh my God. I'm simultaneously super upset that they dumped a member.
She dumped them.
Excited. She dumped them? Wow,
she dumped them.
That was a bad move. Do you think they'll just make, I'm worried they'll just make Ty Dolla $ign the permanent Fifth Harmony.
That's why you have this one chance, Pete. You can save us from Fourth Harmony plus Ty Dolla $ign.
I'm gonna join.
I have
This is my destiny.
I have a couple of things about that. One, I always thought that Ty Dolla $ign was the Green Ranger of Fifth Harmony. It turns out he wasn't. It turns out that he is the Tuxedo Mask of Fifth Harmony. And
all right, that fits a little better.
Camilla Cabal, whatever, that girl, the one who left, she was the Green Ranger all along.
She was the Green Ranger all along?
Yep. You think she's cool, but no, sometimes she just leaves.
I think Tuxedo Mask might be one of the sweetest nicknames in the world.
It is. I'm sure that Tuxedo Mask would be a wrestler if not for Sailor Moon.
As far as an actual character, like, not that great. No. But as far as naming conventions go, they were on point.
Yeah, they did it.
They pulled the right ping pong balls out of the fishbowl for that one.
They did. And also, Ty Dolla $ign actually is on a song that isn't Work From Home, it turns out.
Really?
Yeah, he's on a Chance the Rapper song. He sings. I guess he's a singer, primarily.
Sure, whatever.
So what are we actually doing here today?
We are here for our Game of the Year podcast. We're here to determine a bunch of different categories to sum up our year that we've been through together, our second year of podcasting. Isn't that a crazy thing?
Yeah,
right?
Man.
When you think about it, we're doing it.
Death comes for us all.
Yes. And so, as is customary with our podcast, we start our Game of the Year a little bit differently than most because our podcast is not restricted by anims.
No.
We do what we want.
That's why we're better.
Play. Yes, we are. We play the good games like Sonic.
No.
We'll get to that game.
Don't you say it.
So, it's time for Game of the Year 2016. So when I say that, listener, I mean this is the game of the year of the games we played that actually came out in 2016. So we played tons more games than the ones that actually came out in 2016, so it kind of narrows down our Game of the Year for 2016 quite substantially. However, it is not as bad as last year, where we had literally three games, and one of them was kind of cheating.
And to be clear, not every single one of the nominees was actually released in 2016. Some were released late last year, but, we didn't play them, or they were
re-released.
Yeah.
So
a couple of them get in for free.
Some of them. And just a reminder for our Game of the Year podcast, the way that we score first of all spoilers all the time. We're not,
yes.
This is your one official spoiler warning. Any game that we feel is worth discussing, we also feel is worth discussing in depth. So, be warned, we will have spoilers for most of the games that we are going to talk about in any given category. We will announce the nominees first, so if you want to check out for a category, you will know prior to us talking about the games. Second, our Game of the Year and all of our awards are subject to a majority rule. So we will not have a tie. We have 3 people here, and so we will always have a winner of some kind, even though sometimes we have winners with protests.
Yes, there can be dissenting opinions.
Unanimous winners sometimes do happen, though.
They do.
Sure.
They usually happen. I would say we, more often than not, are able to come to a happy consensus. But sometimes you pick games that are bad for Game of the Year, and then,
Bad?
people have to dissent. So,
Oh, like you nominated Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood?
okay, Game of the Year 2016.
Starting us off.
Nominees are The Witness, Devil Daggers, Jotun, Firewatch, Overwatch, Inside, Fury, Thumper, and Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. That didn't come out this year.
Who put that in there?
Who put that in there? I'm going to go ahead and eliminate I motion to remove Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood because it did not come out in 2016.
Seconded.
Though it
My
haunts us every year.
Motions to remove Sonic Chronicles: The Dark
Despite the
Brotherhood.
fact that it continues to linger in this physical plane and haunt us, it did not come out this year. So, are there any games here that we can comfortably remove so we can make this conversation easier?
I feel like we can get rid of Thumper. It was a very cool experience, but I think it is too linear and too one-dimensional to really encapsulate what we're talking about with best overall game.
I disagree.
Well, I think, not to open a can of worms here, but I think we have sort of an MVP issue, right? In that, okay, how do we define valuable? Are we defining game of the year, the one that we enjoyed the most, or the one that best encapsulates 2016 as a year?
Ideally, it should be both, but
Okay.
I would aim, if that cannot be achieved, I would lean more towards game we enjoyed the most than most. This is game of the year, not most 2016.
Not most 20. Okay. Sounds fair.
Because if that was the case, there'd be just like we would have to find a game that mentions millennials like 7 different times. And
Right.
Pete, I think you are touching your microphone or your cable or something.
Sure.
Something was making noise.
I used the mute thing. I will stop. I won't do it again.
Okay. So we have, I think, Devil Daggers. I think we can comfortably get removed.
I would be okay with just putting Devil Daggers in the nice honorable mention category for
Putting
this
a
one.
Devil Dagger through Devil Daggers.
Yeah.
Fair.
Devil Daggers is a great game. It's a really small serving size, though, and ultimately none of us, I think, had the community of people that pushed us to keep playing Devil Daggers. And it's
keep going, Joe.
Oh, I was going to say, it's a game that knows what its serving size is, and just, it nails it. It's a cheap price point. It has a great loop, and it's not trying to be anything more than like a throwback to Doom, but a very good throwback to Doom.
Yeah. I think based on that sort of attitude, we could drop Jotun and Fury as well. 2 more games that are, they're solid boss rushes, but I don't think you could really elevate a boss rush in that way.
I want to keep one.
You want to keep Fury?
No, don't tell me what I think. Can we just put those 2 on the side for a second while
Which one do you want to keep? Because I'm cool with losing both of them.
Yeah, as am I.
Yeah, what I'm saying is just let me think about it for a second and let's examine some of the other cases. We're going to have to get down to like 2 or 3.
This is a real Sophie's choice for Billy. Like, he can't save both his children.
Yeah, the thing is, this year, I've liked almost every game that we've played.
Yeah.
Like, there were some last year, well, we had to get it down to like 2 immediately, and that was very easy because no one was going to fight for Until Dawn. And then it was between like Undertale and the Talos Principle, and that was a decent conversation. But this one, other than Devil Daggers, just because I think it was strong, but we didn't enjoy it as much as some of these other games. I can make a case for almost any of these games winning this award, depending on how people feel about it. So, I mean, honestly, if I was going to cut, if we're going to go to a different one, how's about Firewatch?
I think we can cut both the watches.
I don't know. Well, you didn't play Overwatch. I liked Overwatch a lot.
I know of Overwatch. Just because I didn't play it with you guys doesn't mean I don't know what's going on.
I would let's keep Overwatch for now. I could get rid of Firewatch.
I can also get rid of Firewatch.
Okay.
Yeah, so Firewatch, great game. Or at least I think it's a very good game. I think it's got some big plot problems and some focus issues that really hurt it. And ultimately, it has just enough tonal dissonance that it doesn't achieve something greater than the sum of its parts for me.
True.
I love the artwork. I love the dialogue. I love some of the banter stuff that's going on and the structure. But
I like the environmental synergy there. There was
Yeah.
lots of environmental play.
Unfortunately, when it makes its turn, I feel like all of us felt it was to the game's detriment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
how much did you guys like The Witness? Because I would get rid of The Witness.
Knowing that games like, I think I'm not ready to strike out The Witness yet, because I know that maybe it won't win, but I don't want to lose it right now.
Those stupid quote logs. Ugh.
I know that I'm gonna go back and play The Witness again, and I don't know if I can say that for some of these other games on here. Like, one of the things that I think about when I think of Game of the Year is something that just commands like your attention and replayability, and that's one of the biggest features for me.
for me, if I never found the environmental puzzles, I would cut The Witness in a heartbeat, because I found some of the line puzzles to ultimately be more frustrating than enjoyable. I didn't mind the navel-gazy quotes quite so much, just because I thought that there was a nice synergy between the layout, the level design, the puzzle design, and the quotes, and it made a nice cohesive whole for me. Especially as someone who's played Myst, it kind of added to this sense of a forgotten place that was created with a purpose. But there were definitely some moments that I just didn't enjoy playing The Witness. But man, it like that game, the look and the sounds and some of just the design of that thing is really impressive, even if it's not fun.
Yeah, and I mean, the environmental puzzles were a great sort of piece, like you said, Gino. But I think we have other categories to reward that sort of thing. I think The Witness had the lowest point of any game we played this year with some of its levels.
What do you mean?
Do you remember that stupid sun level?
I do.
The one where you went down into the pyramid?
About that? Yeah. God, that was miserable.
Yeah.
All right.
And there were some puzzles like the color puzzle where my eyes, which I do not know if I was at one point told by an optometrist that I am slightly colorblind. I have not had that be a problem before, but the color section of The Witness made me question my eyes in a way that I just haven't with other things in a really long time. And I was just like, is my hearing wrong? Is there something wrong with my eyes, or am I not getting the puzzle? And when I'm starting to question my own like physical capability, it got really frustrating.
We
Not to
haven't
mention,
even mentioned.
There are some people who just have colorblindness, and those sections are actually impossible.
Sounds like a strike through. I don't know.
We haven't even talked about Inside yet.
I think for a reason. I wouldn't be comfortable cutting Inside.
No, neither would I.
You wouldn't be comfortable cutting Inside?
Not even close.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm down to keep Inside, but if we're going to keep Inside, do you think, honestly, Overwatch is going to beat Inside?
No, I don't like Overwatch going before Fury does. Or Jotun.
I don't think, like, Billy, I know you like them, but if we're going for consensus here, they're not going to win. Because me and Gino both don't like them that much.
I like Jotun. Right. I like Jotun more than I like Fury, and
I'd agree with you.
It's just both of them.
I think if I had to keep one for this category, I'd keep Jotun. So can we say strike Fury and give Jotun a second chance later?
Yeah, that's
fine. We can do that.
By Fury, you have boss rushes, I guess.
And perfect music.
And very good music.
Visual aesthetics that are insane.
It's a shame that when you're showing those off the most, like, you press a button to auto walk. Because the controls are weird. Okay, so now we've got The Witness, Jotun, Overwatch, Inside, and Thumper.
All right, is it time to revisit Thumper? Gino,
That's fine.
You defended it.
Yeah, so the reason why I defended Thumper was I just really... it made me like rhythm games again in a way that I haven't enjoyed a rhythm game in a very long time. I didn't think that making a silver beetle go through geometrically confusing areas while getting assaulted by the track was going to be the thing that made rhythm games for me. But Thumper, just that sense of, synesthesia might not be the right term, but that sense of just kind of creating music out of these physical inputs is something that, since I cannot play an instrument, it's this weird experience when everything is working right in Thumper. And I feel like the lessons of rhythm games got applied to such a different genre. Like survival horror as rhythm game is such a novel idea, and the execution was so high. Now, I'm willing to, I don't think Thumper is going to beat some of these other games, but for me, Thumper might be my second favorite game on this. I have a personal top 10 list that will be coming out pretty shortly on a site that I write for. But this podcast, I think, is coming out. Hopefully, this podcast will come out after that, or we'll edit this out. This segment where I'm saying this out. But I think Thumper is number 2 of the games on this list for me personally.
Yeah, I think a fair and passionate defense, Gino.
But Thumper can,
Yeah, I don't think it'll win. But yeah, you make good points. Yeah.
I'm fine with it going. So now we have The Witness, Jotun, Overwatch, and Inside. And I take my knife out and I direct it at Overwatch.
I'm okay with losing Overwatch as well.
Yeah, that's what
I think Overwatch.
I think my main reason for playing Overwatch, for striking out Overwatch here, is that when I think of a game of the year, I think of something that doesn't have rage-inducing teammates and doesn't have a story that you really can't get by yourself. I mean, one of the things that I think about when I think about Game of the Year is this should be akin to your favorite book that when you're on holiday break you can just kind of curl up next to by the fire and marathon that thing one more time. And it never gets old. And so that just completely disqualifies Overwatch for me.
Sure.
The Witness, Jotun, and Inside can still fit there.
Yeah, none of us are the person who is going to sit down and play a multiplayer shooter for hours on end unprompted, I don't think. And that's kind of what does it for Overwatch, for this podcast and this group of people. None of us enjoy sitting down and playing multiplayer shooters that much. And so if you're not into that, Overwatch it's excellent. It's really well balanced, or it seemed well balanced at my low level of skill. But that's something that you just can't. Yeah. I can't sit down and play. I uninstalled it as soon as I was done playing it because I try not to let my life get eaten by games like that.
Yeah, it's just the wrong genre.
So,
The Witness, Jotun, and Inside.
Keeping with my exact same model there, I'm probably going to look at The Witness next to go. Because even though I loved everything about that game, even the crappy levels with the sunlight, and even the levels with the weird colors that colorblind people just can't play, I think that game had this element of mystery when you were always looking towards this mountaintop, and every time you activated one of those other little beacons, you were like, oh shit, man, something's up there. The whole game was building to this crescendo, and for me, it kind of delivered. You got something really cool at the end. And even if
hotel.
What?
You got a hotel
in the sky,
a shot of some dude's apartment.
Yeah,
whatever, man. Look,
it's a weird game.
I liked it, and I liked that it had its own version of the Insomniac Museum. And this game holds a lot of weight for me, but when I think about that kind of game of the year, you know what, it's time for me to sit down and get another playthrough of this game, I'm not looking at The Witness because it's just so heavy. It's so meaty. You just can't have a casual playthrough of The Witness. So I'm ready to strike it out if you guys are.
That's not what bugs me about The Witness. It's just the other two games never had the moment of frustration that I had with The Witness. And ultimately, the navel-gazy sort of self-reflection stuff I enjoyed it, but there's that game I should love, and I like.
The Witness?
Yeah. I should love it for how clever it is and how well
try to
designed
remind
it is.
you that I think it was made by one guy or one or two guys.
No. Jonathan Blow, the person who made Braid, he designed and made The Witness, but he had a team.
A team. Okay.
Yeah, he funded a team using some of his Braid money and some other money. So there were multiple people working on The Witness.
Okay. Yeah, I could have been misfacted on that. Either way, we're down to 2.
At this point, I think it's pretty clear. And Gino, don't let me put words in your mouth. But I think it'd be pretty clear where me and Gino are headed. So should we give Billy a chance to stump for Jotun?
Yes.
One final time?
All right,
Really impressed me.
Yeah. So
this is like Shark Tank, Billy.
I know that...
I'm Mark Cuban.
I know that I'm going to have to podium a couple of times in this podcast for games that probably shouldn't win, but I want to try to get one on the books for when it matters, and it's going to be Game of the Year 2016. So I think about Jotun, and I think about a storybook. Like your favorite story as a kid, and it's got all the visual aesthetics you want, and it's got a great soundtrack, fantastic voice acting.
Billy, what are you talking about?
I remember when I flipped through the Cat in the Hat and that soundtrack kicked in, and I was like, "Yo, Cat!"
What I mean to say is
these mixed metaphors he's throwing
What
out.
I mean to say is you go back to it, and all the aesthetics that you feel are familiar. They evoke familiarity.
Okay.
So maybe it's a VHS tape that you had when you were a kid.
There we go.
And your grandma makes you put it in the tape every Christmas, and you have to also program the VCR because she doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah, I had
right?
one of those.
So now that I got you relating to me again, when I think about Jotun, I think about a game that I can pick up and play in 1 or 2 days. It's got a great storyline, a compelling character, fantastic voice acting, good combat, dynamic combat, one that I'm going to talk about in later categories. I think this game offers so many of the elements of that package deal that I'm looking for Game of the Year. And when I look at Inside, I think that was a cool story that had this weird twist at the end. And I'm not quite sure what that was all about. And it was also pretty linear, and there wasn't that much character development, nor was there much. I mean, it was also a pretty one-dimensional visual aesthetic. We still kind of had that sort of, what was the other game? Limbo kind of aesthetic. Even though it had more depth to its aesthetic, it wasn't quite as complete and fleshed out as Jotun. And I think that there were times Inside where there were just head-banging, frustrating moments, as much as there were probably in Jotun as well. But for me, Jotun was a game that had no part of it that I was like, man, this sucks. I wish I could just get through this section. But there was underwater levels in Inside, and most of those are water levels are notoriously bad. And Inside did a good job of buffering out the bad water levels, but there was still kind of bad water levels in Inside. So overall, I think Jotun was the most complete package here, and Inside did something really cool, but it doesn't win me over enough. Jotun's just got too much of the checkboxes checked for me.
So, Pete, do you want to respond, or me?
I mean, I think what Billy's maybe overlooking, I think the point I take most issue with is the question of character development. Because it seems sort of ancillary to Inside as a project. Inside is more describing sort of a dystopic environment or sort of corporate structure. It's making larger points beyond these sort of specific individual characters. And, there's layers to this story, right? Those sort of questions you're left with through this twist, I think are ultimately the point of the story in a way that Jotun's, it's neat. It's sort of complete. You get to the end, you know what you've gotten. And, I like something that's going to make me scratch my head just a little bit more. And Inside does that very effectively.
Yeah. For me, that's the big difference. That's one of the big differences between Jotun and Inside is Jotun is an excellent fairy tale or storybook type style of story. It's kind of didactic. You've got this character who's very relatable, kind of going on a hero's journey, conquering these foes, and ultimately being rewarded with kind of ascension into Valhalla. And it's a very neat story. It retells some elements of Norse mythology, and it encapsulates them in a great hand-drawn art style with some solid gameplay wrapped around it. But ultimately, it felt to me like a series of snapshots of cool locales and historical facts, a la something like Never Alone, rather than kind of this cohesive work that is in every way trying to make a larger argument the way Inside does. I felt like Inside had a lot of good commentary on there's some capitalist some like clear capitalist critiques. There are some clear critiques of authoritarianism. It seemed like there were critiques about people as commodity versus bodies being exploited. The twist at the end kind of brings that all together, and it has some themes of like uprising and fighting against some sort of oppressor. And it made me constantly question, like, why are these scenes here? What are they trying to get at? What is the interpretive value of all of these moments? And how they use different mechanics to reinforce those ideas, I thought was very inventive. Jotun, it's an excellent action-adventure kind of, isometric kind of combat game. It's got some good exploration. It's got a lot of cool vignettes, but ultimately I felt like a kind of a tourist in Norse mythology, kind of acting out the story of this knight or this Viking. Even though there's this cool story kind of being unfolded as you go, for me, the draw was more being a tourist in these different locales and seeing how an artist rendered this richer history rather than being completely wrapped up in Thora's story.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm getting at, Billy?
I think the point that if there's anything going to win me over, it's going to be the head-scratching mechanic, because I also do like a game that is worthy of discussion after it's finished. I won't say that I'm convinced, but I will suffer the will of this democracy that is our Game of the Year podcast, because I know that it's going to work in my favor later.
Right.
And we all know the real winner is Game of our Year. So,
all right. So Inside is the winner of Game of the Year 2016 for us specifically.
Do we clap? If we clap,
it's probably gonna fuck up all the audio.
Whatever, it'll be fine. So, thank you, Inside. On to category number 2, Best Comedy. So, on our podcast, we do not like the kind of best story as a giant nebulous category where all of a sudden you have to compare games that are going for completely separate things and completely separate emotions. It'd be like the Oscars having a category. I mean, there is a best film category, but they acknowledge other things first before they get to, like, film of the year. And I think that acknowledging the narrative elements in different specific ways instead of just one grandiose best narrative kind of lets us dig a little bit deeper into what makes these games great from a narrative perspective. So, without further ado, Best Comedy, the nominees are Oddworld, Stranger's Wrath, Beautiful Joe, Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, and Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
So, either Sonic or Barkley have to go right now.
Sonic Chronicles, thank you for competing, but you're gone. And that game, it has jokes.
No, it doesn't. It has
does.
snark.
It does. They try
There's
to tell
a difference.
jokes. There was a section where I rescued a kid named Billy from a well, and I was like, oh, that's a Lassie joke. Oh, God. What am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And that's why it loses this category. So we've got 3 games left. I think Oddworld is pretty funny, but I don't like fart humor.
Yeah, it's funny in a puerile way.
No, whoa. Hang on. I think we're being too hasty here.
All right, Billy, convince us.
Convince us the high level of Joe Mama when you capture Joe Mama. It's working on levels. There's layers.
And also, look, and I know, Billy, I know this isn't what your point is, but let's not forget that Oddworld did have an extended prison rape joke section.
They did.
That just indicates what the humor was like in this game.
Pulling that off to the side for a second.
That's fine, and I totally get that. I just want to acknowledge it.
We can acknowledge it. It's there. Okay. I think about if you're going to pull that card, Barkley is instantly gone.
I mean, I'm fine with dropping Barkley too.
Okay.
So does that mean Beautiful Joe just wins?
No.
That's my vote. I mean, I'll sort of bury the lead on this one.
So when I'm looking at a comedy, I want a game to actually deliver humor and make it accessible, right? I think when I was playing Beautiful Joe, the times where it was funny were funny, and they were just, those were little punctuations between like mind-numbing difficulty and challenge if you picked like adults setting, and kids setting was not fun to play.
Setting.
Yeah, there was that. I forgot about that in Beautiful Joe.
So I think we're in a weird situation because my vote is probably for Barkley, and
this does not happen.
Let's make our arguments for each of these games because I think at least one of us will be budged. So my reason for Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden winning is, although it is deeply offensive in a number of different ways, I find its use of diabetes as a punchline to be terrible. I find its different healing items to be repugnant. I find several of its status effects to be terrible. When Charles Barkley opens on the screen and talks about 1,000,000 trillion b-balls dribbling in the universe, when Larry Bird is a priest who gets gunned down and tells you to, and he looks after your son, and when Michael Jordan guns down Larry Bird, it tickles me in a way that none of these other games did. I legitimately laughed out loud multiple times in Barkley's Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. And these other games, I chuckled occasionally, but there was nothing as funny as the ghost of Dikembe Mutombo teaching me the holy dunk. Barkley's Shut Up and Jam has high highs. It also has the lowest of lows.
Yeah.
I think that the overlap of people that are going to appreciate basketball humor and people that are going to play video games is pretty slim. So this is comedy
This is our podcast.
You're right.
We have 2 of those people. And let me just say, when you go to the b-ball dimension and you fight Kevin
Garnett in the Coliseum,
that's pretty great. That's pretty great.
It is.
I think what's going to disqualify this is the absurd
Billy,
humor.
Remember when you go to the options menu and you can switch the language option to Albed, and it's just Albed for the rest of the game?
Yeah.
Remember when you boot it up and it has a bootleg? First, it says like it's real 3D and the game is in 2D the whole time, and it's just a shack face. And then it starts with just the most blatant of Space Jam theme ripoffs. It's amazing.
I also remember the part where they made Asperger's syndrome a status effect and said it was cured by giving the characters alcohol, and I'm just like,
it's real gross.
It made me quit the game.
It's real bad.
I didn't finish the game. I quit because I didn't like anything that it was doing, that it was trying to be funny.
But then it had a snail zauber.
Yeah, that was actually the best weapon for him in that game. But I'm just not going to ever consent to Barkley winning Best Comedy. Like, it could win something else in another category, but the ways it tries to be funny are just absolutely I would never, ever want Barkley to inspire anyone else's comedy in a video game.
Well, Billy, make your argument then.
Make your argument for Oddworld Stranger's Wrath then.
I'm going to just propose something. If we can team up on Beautiful Joe just so Barkley doesn't win, I'm down instantly.
No, don't politics yet.
Oh, I'm 100% politicking right now.
Make your argument for Oddworld.
Okay.
Gino swayed. I'll be honest. Gino has me teetering.
Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam.
Oh man,
bamboozle from all angles.
Now I have to choose whether or not
for Oddworld. That's what you need to do.
You need to make an impassioned speech.
Oh, because if I want Barkley to not win, I'm gonna have to argue for VJ.
Okay, then.
Then argue for Beautiful Joe, man.
Whatever can you?
Best.
Dun, 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 dun.
Jesus.
Listen.
Okay. So, you know how when we're kids and we're watching Disney films?
Why do you have to start everything with this like tortured metaphor?
It's what I do, man. Okay.
Fine.
Pro tip: just reference some of the funny stuff. Make us remember what was funny. Remember the funny.
You know when we're kids and there's humor in like a Disney movie that we don't get yet because we're like 9 and it doesn't hit us.
Yeah.
And then you watch it again when you're an adult and you're like, oh wow, this shit's actually funny. Because there's humor that I didn't get when I was younger.
Yes.
I feel like Oddworld has both of those things. I feel like the ammunition saying shitty things at you was great. I feel like all of the characters, even though there was some fart humor, there is a place for that. Well, yeah, the second half of the game didn't have much fart humor. Okay,
that's true. The second half of the game also, I think, ceased to be a comedy.
No, I think it maintained some of its comedy elements, even though it had a very specific tone shift. The other little like lizard creatures had comedic impact. I think that the whole first half of the game was just a comedy hook, and it was designed to be super accessible. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. There were fantastic characters. There were also silly characters. And it created this complete package of the right kind of humor for the right kind of game, and it had squirrels that talked shit when you shot them at people.
Hey, Pete, remember when the statue of Muggsy Bogues, the sarcophagus of Muggsy Bogues, cried a single b-ball tear?
Because Jordan was so mean to him all the time.
Remember when you fight zombie Kobe Bryant because he cannot be laid to rest?
Look. It's my time to jump.
It's your turn.
I think we're asking ourselves a larger philosophical question here. And I think Gino pointed it out, right? How much do we weigh, right? Do we want to reward a game for having a high ceiling, right, but an incredibly low floor? Or just look at Beautiful Joe, which is fairly consistent throughout, fairly humorous. It's a pretty obvious send-up of a specific genre, right? A specific sort of type of film, television show, what have you. It's inoffensive, right? Nobody's really going to be upset about it. It's just generally pretty funny. So I think, it doesn't have, I can't reference the same sort of specificity as Barkley in terms of here are the best jokes, but I also can't think of anything where I thought, man, this is really terrible. I'm really offended by this. And I think we're asking ourselves a philosophical question here. What do we value more? Sort of just consistent good nature, consistent good humor, or actual laugh out loud moments combined with really pernicious terribleness.
Yeah, so let me provide you with some of the laugh out loud moments just to remind you of some of these characters. some of these great moments, such as Hulk Davidson.
Yeah, the names were pretty spot on.
We had Alistair, a.k.a. I think it was a.k.a. the Thunder Kid. Midnight Thunder Kid?
Midnight Thunder
Thunder
Kid?
Boy?
Midnight Thunder
Boy.
The Midnight Thunder Boy. The names were outstanding in
The
Beautiful
names
Joe,
were perfect.
and they did 90% of the comedic work in
Spot
this
on.
game. But damn, they did work.
They did. They did well.
I don't think they did 90%. I think there was more than that. I think there was just solid banter between Beautiful Joe and the enemies, and they made the proper nods to classic like Hollywood tropes for action films.
Also,
I don't want to have to podium for 2 games at once.
and I feel I like Barkley. I think was at its peak much funnier than Beautiful Joe, but it's such a narrow field of funny. Like Gino, you make a great point that this is our podcast, but we are such like a hyper specific audience for this game.
Case in point here is going to be the save states, like the saving locations. How many people are going to get that?
Me. It's
You
me.
and 4
I
other
skip all
people
that.
in the United States,
Yeah.
and maybe one guy in Finland because we have a shit ton of listeners in Finland.
It's me, it turns out. You know, I am okay with Beautiful Joe winning this, mostly because of the Midnight Thunder Boy and Hulk Davidson. I am not okay with Oddworld winning it.
Oh,
and I
Oddworld's
also am perfectly fine with punishing Charles Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden for having a protracted segment where you are exposed to sugar and then die.
Yeah.
As funny as it is that you fight sentient Gatorade bottles, and as much as it made me chuckle to put down the ghost of Kobe Bryant, there were some moments like, hey, the Octoroon great-grandson of LeBron James, where I was like, that's real fucked up what they just made me read.
Yeah.
So
I
I am
think-
perfectly fine. I just wanted to get out there. Some of these jokes, the highest highs,
Yeah.
comedically, I think were with Shut Up and Jam Gaiden.
I think Shut Up and Jam Gaiden is the only game we played this year that made me laugh out loud. But I can't say best comedy because of the things you just mentioned, you know.
That's fair. All right. So that means that Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, bye-bye.
Fine.
Sorry, Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. You were good. Beautiful Joe, you are our winner.
God, I feel like I just dodged a goddamn bullet.
I think we made the right choice on that one.
Yeah. I'm. You know what? This is also our podcast. We don't have to reward the thing that made us laugh the hardest if it also made us cringe the most.
Good point.
So, we're on to Best Drama. The category and the nominees are Her Story, Mass Effect, Final Fantasy VII, Inside, Never Alone, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, Final Fantasy IX, Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, Firewatch, and Silent Hill 4. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
Wait. No. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay.
But Knuckles, though.
Yeah, if this was Knuckles Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, we'd have a conversation. But it isn't, alas.
I don't think Barkley can exist in both these categories either.
I know there are the moments where Charles Barkley, though, is talking about a million trillion b-balls dribbling, and I'm like, or when Larry Bird is telling him, look, Charles, you need to move past your wife's death. And I'm like, they're operating in drama.
That's true.
They're
It's a
living in it for a
dramedy.
second. But mostly because it's a black comedy and they're just going for the most extreme. So I X that out. Like, the time when Charles is walking back to his house and he has flashbacks to Chaos Dunk, New York, that actually is pretty good drama.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But I've removed it from the category. Thanks, Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. So I think Never Alone would be a game I'm okay with losing here.
I'm okay with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good, but again, it suffers from kind of being this storybook kind of game.
It doesn't like pull me in multiple directions emotionally.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Silent Hill 4, maybe?
Yeah, I was gonna
Probably
say
get rid of
that
Silent
one.
Hill 4.
Yeah, it's just a little too Silent Hilly, you know?
Yeah. It's aggressively Japanese.
Yeah.
I'm going to propose Her Story as the next one.
Next one to drop.
Because I think if you're going to have a drama, you really have to have sort of like character interaction. And there wasn't really in Her Story. There was character interaction between us and the character, sure, to a degree. But I was not pulled. There was no internal conflict when I was thinking about Her Story.
I'm comfortable with that drop, but I'm going to propose a different reason. Is I think drama and the sort of detective work you're called on to do in Her Story are sort of working at cross purposes. Like, I don't think you can have the same sort of, empathy or emotional development required for a drama when the question is really mostly figuring out, okay, what happened? What's going on here? Those sorts of questions.
So do you think the two most critical parts of the game are in some sense working against one another?
I think not so much that it's the most critical. I think because it's a detective story, it doesn't function as a drama as well as some of the other games we're looking at.
I would say there is so we get some information later in Her Story that you're actually the son or daughter of Hannah / Eve in the character. And I think if we had gotten that maybe earlier and they played with that more, we could have a contender here. Because if you have to research your own, your own mom's, I guess you can, but
you can get that information a little bit earlier, depending on when you decide to respond to the text message that you get.
You don't get it until you've seen at least 50% of the scenes. So it's guaranteed to come in second half of the game. I mean, literally, numerically, you have to see 50%, 51% of the scenes, and then that text message is available to you.
Yeah.
So it has to come later in the game.
I think it's got great tension, and it builds up a pretty cohesive narrative with a really novel structure.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think I'm okay with cutting it because it is such a. Its thriller chops kind of come from the way you play through it. And I don't know how much of it is that the story is really compelling and how much of it is the structure. Ultimately, I'm perfectly fine with those being being muddled and, not doling out points. But I think that ultimately the story of Her Story, while being pretty compelling in how it's told, I don't think it stacks. I don't really remember the story of Her Story as fondly as I do some of the other games that are still hanging. I found it more novel than I found it compelling.
Yeah, that's a good synopsis.
So the remaining games are Mass Effect, Final Fantasy VII, Inside, Final Fantasy IX, and Firewatch. I'm fine with losing Firewatch.
No,
I don't want to lose
Firewatch. Yeah.
Okay. I'm fine with losing Final Fantasy VII.
I was gonna say we can't have two Final Fantasies.
Yeah,
I think Final Fantasy IX could clutch this out, but let's see.
Let's lose 7. 7's a good game. I just think that it is not even the best Final Fantasy game story-wise.
I'll say 7 is dramatic, but it's not the best drama.
Yes, if it was most drama, Final Fantasy VII might win, but alas, it is not.
Is anyone clamoring for Mass Effect either?
I'm not. I'm ready to lose Mass Effect, but I want to speak specifically about why. So when I think about a drama, I think about a story that pulls you in and doesn't really let you say no. You can just completely murder everything in Mass Effect and miss most of the drama stuff. You could just be a murderous asshole in Mass Effect, and you kind of lose a lot of the drama. So the fact that you just have a very easy opt-out makes me not really that hyped to put Mass Effect in best drama. A game like Inside or Final Fantasy IX or Firewatch, the choices that you have to make are gonna compel you one way or the other. Some of the character developments are going to compel you one way or the other. And that happens too in Mass Effect, but because it's completely missable in a way that I think Mass Effect shines in other parts of storytelling, that nothing's guaranteed. You have to explore and your choices matter. I don't think this is going to cut it for me for best drama.
That's fine with me. I find that argument pretty compelling. And also, Mass Effect, it tells this kind of large story, but I found the vignettes, the small moments, to be much more compelling than the overarching drama of will we stop the Reapers or not. Like, I that didn't win me over that much.
Like, I actually think Rex's storyline might be the most compelling for me. And maybe Tally's. You know, there could be some of those gems, those little vignettes of great drama and storytelling, but yeah, it's so missable, and it's so separated by just straight up violence and stuff that I'm not really into Mass Effect being the best drama. It's best space opera.
Yes.
Sure.
Certainly.
Sure.
So now we have Inside, Final Fantasy IX, and Firewatch.
Okay. So I'm going to stump for Firewatch.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm also gonna stump for Firewatch.
Okay.
Is that just game over?
Is anyone stumping for Inside?
No, but I would stump for... You know what I'm stumping for.
Yeah, we know what you're stumping for. So why don't we drop Inside then?
Okay.
And then we'll stump. We'll do our stumps. Billy, would you like to begin the Firewatch stump?
Actually, I don't, because I feel like I go first all the time.
Okay. So I'll begin the Firewatch stump. So Gino, you know, we can probably guess what you're going to say with Final Fantasy IX. So let me just start by saying what makes Final Fantasy IX a good drama, and it is a good drama, is when you take this sort of cosmic story, which is, I think we can all admit, fairly silly, and bring it to the level of the individual, the personal. And that's what makes it a very solid drama. Firewatch starts with the personal. You don't have to have that reduction. That's the first point I want to make. More importantly, I think my argument is basically going to boil down to the ending. Because the story itself, you know, maybe not as compelling. But the ending, in the fact that there's no real resolution here, I think is what makes it a particularly effective drama. Like, you never see the woman you've been communicating with the whole time. There's no final meeting. You're not sort of brought together in any way. You're just left. She's gone. She has her problems. You have your problems. And I think that's what makes it a particularly human, a particularly compelling drama, in that you're sort of left at these loose ends in the way that Final Fantasy IX ties them all up. And I think in terms of storytelling, that might be more satisfying. But in terms of dramatic effectiveness, I think it lessens its impact slightly.
Yeah, so my big reason for my big problem with Firewatch, I should say, the reason why I wouldn't necessarily lean towards Firewatch is that I feel the dramatic moment, I feel once it turns towards thriller as a genre and starts becoming a whodunit story and what happens story, I feel like it really deadens the impact of the interpersonal drama that the game is. Honestly, that's the backbone of my interest in the game, is Delilah and Henry, and will they, won't they? Are their lives too messed up? Will anything come of this? But for a large stretch of the game, that just kind of goes on hiatus, and you're trying to find out if a kid was murdered, and if he was murdered, who did it, and what happened, and it's not even there. For like a while, you're wondering, like, am I being watched by government researchers, and like what's going on in this open field, like on the other side of the map. And I just found those moments so much less compelling. If the game stayed rooted in the interpersonal, the way you articulated, Pete, I would be a lot more into it, and I could agree. I just find that for so long the game is spending so much of its narrative weight and narrative time focused on stuff that ultimately didn't further the things that I think were strong.
Okay.
Whereas I think Final Fantasy IX, despite all of its different kind of spokes, and it's dealing with the cosmic in this weird way, I feel like it is always looking back and trying to root it in these interpersonal moments and trying to tie those themes together, even if it is a little bit wonky to go from huge cosmic scale down to interpersonal. I think that they are constantly kind of motioning back towards how does this character's interpersonal drama affect kind of continental conflicts? How does this person's interpersonal drama impact their worldview, which then leads them to do heroic actions? And then how does that also kind of frame against the villain? and what they represent. And so I feel like these kind of dramatic clashes that go kind of from the smallest of scopes to the largest, like you're fighting this gigantic world-ending beast, I feel like they are all still hitting on the same general themes, and it becomes a more cohesive work for me. And so even though I feel like it can at moments be ludicrous, I think that it does a good enough job justifying its motion towards the cosmic to not bother me that much. And the moments where Firewatch is just kind of playing with thriller tropes, I think in that game it was slightly more off-putting for me.
Mm-hmm.
Billy, you've been quiet. Do you have anything?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
The first is quick, so I'll mention this quickly. I think that both Final Fantasy IX and Firewatch fit drama as a genre. I think that Final Fantasy IX has a little bit of an unfair advantage by being 10 times longer than Firewatch.
Of course. It has more story.
Firewatch takes like 3, maybe 4 hours to beat, and Final Fantasy IX, 50 or more easily. So when I think about Final Fantasy IX building up all these characters and building up all these storylines, well, of course they do, because they have the space to do that. It's a JRPG, and this is what they do. So within its own game subgenre, JRPG versus this sort of like, what's the word that I was looking for? Like interactive story, interactive novel that almost is Firewatch. I think that Final Fantasy IX just does a lot of the things that JRPGs do anyway, so it wasn't that compelling for me. Yeah, they build up characters that have meaningful backstories if you find them and if you look for them, and I'm thinking like, okay, this is cool, but that's what I'm expecting from a JRPG to start. If you don't deliver that in a JRPG, you got nothing to fill those other 35 hours of non-combat.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say a similar thing of a narrative experience like Firewatch, in terms of if this is a game that is in dialogue with games like Gone Home or what are some of the other ones? I mean, The Witness is not really the same genre, but the games that are derisively
Talos
called
Principle,
walking simulators.
Talos is more of a puzzle game.
Yeah, it's more of a puzzle game. That's more like The Witness, but something like Gone Home definitely, I feel like, fits in that same genre. Tacoma is another game that's coming out soon, but there are these games where we're walking around and exploring the environment are your primary mode of narrative exposition. And
so here's okay.
That was kind of what I expected from Firewatch, is what I mean. And I feel a little bit weird with kind of saying, because this game is I feel weird about it being like a weight class, because this game is longer. It should be kind of like the narrative is not going to be as compelling, because of course it's, this 300-pound fighter should beat the crap out of this 120-pound fighter. Well, they're in a fight.
I'm not going there. So I don't want you to have to like fight me that hard on that. That was supposed to be my small point.
No. I'm just saying, like, it's not like we have a best comedy for a short film, which might exist in like an Oscars sort of situation. These are the two. This is the category. So we have something that's 40 hours long up against something that's 5, and that's kind of the nature of the beast.
So let me say this. I'm going to compare a couple of things. I want to compare the things you have to look for to get the like deeper elements of the drama in Final Fantasy IX, presented in many ways by the active time events. And I want to look at the environmental things you can notice or seek out in Firewatch. When you have story that maybe is optional in Final Fantasy IX. You get a little vignette, and it's presented to you, and you have the option: do you want to look at it or not? And all right, I'm going to get some deep story, some deeper story, or some funny little character point by choosing to watch the active time events. But I think those are much more superficial than the subtle and discreet, but very robust, like, environmental pieces of Firewatch. And I'm going to elaborate. So as this relationship develops between Henry and Delilah, things that are outside of the conversation, outside of the direct gameplay, change. Specifically in Henry's Firewatch tower. Things like when you notice that he's got a picture of his wife on the desk, but then time lapse later and it's been knocked down and it hasn't been put back up. Or you could choose to put it back up or not. Times like when you time lapse and you notice that Henry's not wearing his wedding ring anymore. And why might that be? Or times when, maybe it is a walking simulator for some people, but what I was thinking of that time was tension of silence. Like, am I going to have a reason to talk to Delilah again? I hope she has something menial to just ask me about because I want to hear her voice. So this was not as much of a walking simulator for me, but an opportunity for me to put myself in between this thick tension between these two characters in a story that was also robust with tension and drama. Now, I want to mention or push back against you on something, Gino. There was a time when this game bled into the thriller category a little bit. And you said that took something away from the drama aspect of you. Is that inaccurate, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just felt like it was poorly executed. I thought that the interpersonal drama was really the draw. And as soon as you start making it about this other, what's in the forest and what's going on, are we being watched, it distracted from the stuff I found compelling.
So and I think one of the things that we're both pointing to is that sequence where you're trying to get into the camp, like the secret campsite, and then it turns into it's like a James Bond, gotta break in, gotta report what I find. It's like an espionage mission.
Yeah, that, and when he gets cold cocked and kind of left in the middle of nowhere. Like, there are a couple moments like that.
Yeah, so that stuff for me had a purpose. It wasn't just supposed to be hey guys, take a break for a second, let's make it a thriller. That was supposed to be setting up something bigger than just that small vignette. I was looking at things in the tent scene that made me think something bigger is going on here. This is not actually what it seems. What's going on? And it was things like when you looked at the notebooks inside the tent, they didn't actually have anything written in them. Or when they did, they had like one page on Henry and Delilah, and that's weird. And no other actual scientific research anywhere, and no other anything anywhere. No food, or like there were things missing in that particular tent sequence that made me think this is not just a step into thriller category. This is something else happening between two characters. And I'm going to harken back to my overall argument in Firewatch. This was this narrative about escapism and running from your problems and looking for any excuse to not have to face reality. And both of these characters did that and used that particular sequence to escape. And specifically, when they advanced further in the game, there was like a hard divide between where that sequence was taking place and when you find Brian's body. And then, oh shit, it's back to real life and a kid is dead. That's when the drama hit me the most. When the characters were looking, and I realized that they were looking for any excuse to not think about their real problems, and then bam, a problem hits them in the face that they cannot ignore. Brian's dead. And then the game does shift in a way that stays true to its nature as a drama, a character interaction. That's why stuff like that makes me not look at Final Fantasy IX like a drama in the same way. I need those those punches in the gut again, and those moments in Henry's cabin when you're thinking like, oh well, did he take his ring off for a reason? Why hasn't he put his wife's photo back up? How come things look different? I'm reading into things too much, and I don't get that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? That kind of like speculation, that kind of
intrigue.
Yeah, intrigue and speculation that I get with Final Fantasy IX. I think when Final Fantasy IX gives me its story, its character development, I say, okay, great. A nice break from me grinding levels and abilities and boss fights that I have to just sort of die 4 times to until I find out what their weaknesses are. I like what Firewatch did with its drama in its short amount of time better than I liked Final Fantasy IX.
My question is a couple of things. One, did the fact that you played Final Fantasy IX for large swaths of the end of the game and fast forward potentially impacting your analysis of the drama? Because there are moments, I feel like a lot of the interpersonal moments with subtlety and all that stuff is present in 9. You might not have hit you the same way, but I think that like the moments with Vivi in the Black Mage Village, like there's subtlety in terms of the words they're not saying, in terms of the environment, just like the cinematography of some of those sections, the layout, the how they choose to frame everything. I think that there are definitely moments where you return to places and things are subtly different. Things are rebuilding, things have changed, or they've been destroyed, and you kind of start to see the world kind of organically change over time. And the second point is the fact that this game had grinding potentially distracting from it as a narrative work, because Firewatch did not have that other form of gameplay. It allowed you to really zero in on these little bits of minutia, like significant minutia, but minutia in the environment, and that was kind of your form of grinding, because you were constantly looking for these little nuggets of change rather than looking at making stats go higher. And so it trained your focus in a way that was more effective for the narrative, specifically for you.
My response to that is twofold. The first is I didn't fast forward through the cutscenes or anything like that in Final Fantasy IX. What I fast forwarded through was making my characters deal max damage every time they hit with anything, and fast forwarding through combat so I could and turning off all the random encounters. So I was literally only getting the story at that part of Final Fantasy IX. And second, I spent tons of time wandering around in Firewatch getting nothing accomplished. Hours. I mean, I think it took me maybe 12 hours to beat that game when it should have taken 3 or 4. So if we're going to scale it appropriately and give it like a fair scaling, I think I spent just as much time on a scale factor not getting the story points in Firewatch as I did in Final Fantasy IX.
Okay. So, Pete, are you compelled by either of our arguments? What are you feeling at this point?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it necessarily pains me to say it, but Gino, you've reminded me how much I hated that turn to thriller in Firewatch. Like that the way the narrative of his wife and like her mental deterioration just becomes a footnote to this other story, even after they've introduced it. I think in my enthusiasm for an ending that most people hated, I've forgotten the aspects of the story that bothered me the most. So, suffice it to say, I've been compelled. I am proceeding with Final Fantasy IX as my selection.
Cool. And Billy, can you abide that?
Any
last words for Firewatch? Because I think it's a solid story. My problem is not that it is a bad drama. I think it's actually quite a good drama. I just feel like, we're in a weight class situation where one of these games has 40 hours to go into a lot of depth with environment and with kind of these larger scale ideas than Firewatch is at times interested in.
I think
they abandoned it.
And they abandoned them halfway through.
Wait, would they abandon what?
Like
they could have spent drama they were trying to develop.
They could have spent a lot of time, or more time.
I don't think they ever abandoned it. I think it was part of the plan the whole time.
Well, it's part of the plan, but
because I think the parts that hit harder because we got distracted by this other thing. Like, I think and I will say that there's probably no question that Firewatch is the best soap opera. If we're going to talk about cheesy, romantic tension, and when my wife,
presenting these other categories.
look, I'm okay with Final Fantasy not having best drama. I think it has some of the most compelling characters, in particular Vivi. I think actually Garnet is a compelling character here for best drama, and the relationships that she has and shatters and chooses to either maintain maintain naive belief in her mother or not. I think you can take Final Fantasy IX in some really deep drama directions. I'm gonna not fight anymore. If Final Fantasy IX wins, that's totally fine. But I just want to make sure Firewatch gets its due diligent fought for. So
and I think it has.
Cool, and it has.
Yep.
So sorry Firewatch. The winner of our best drama of 2016 is Final Fantasy IX. So let's go to our last category for kind of genres, best action adventure. So, best action adventure, the nominees are Mark of the Ninja, Mass Effect, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Beautiful Joe, Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, Mirror's Edge, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, Dark Souls, Fury, Inside, and Jotun.
Why don't we
chop
chop
single word names at the end of there?
Why don't we chop this one down a little bit?
Bye-bye Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
Bye-bye Barkley. Can we get rid of Crystal Chronicles?
Yeah, we can get rid of Crystal Chronicles.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
It's not really, it's not a great action adventure.
About Mirror's Edge. Can we drop Mirror's Edge?
I'm fine with that.
We can drop Mirror's Edge.
I don't love it.
Beautiful Joe?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Beautiful Joe going here.
Mark of the Ninja. Do people really...
I want that one there for now.
Okay. I think actually at this point, almost all these games deserve discussion.
Yeah.
I think one of the...
Inside might not be an action adventure.
I think Inside's not an action adventure game.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd get rid of Inside.
I thought it should be in one of these categories since we like the story so much, but I don't know that we... Drama, comedy, or action adventure
really fit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird game and hard to categorize, but it's very good.
I'm sure it'll come back around.
It's kind of like how
it's Game of the Year 2016.
It's kind of like how Undertale was weird and hard to categorize, but it still won.
But Inside was good.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
I like Undertale. I can't talk shit about Undertale.
So in that vein, Fury? Question mark?
Okay, so we have to draw a line between action and adventure, and that's kind of hard because we don't want to split this up into two different categories.
No.
But Fury had me on the edge of my seat, like white knuckles and sweating. Like that game had all the good action for me.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing about Thumper, and I wouldn't put it here.
Fury, no. I mean, in terms of gameplay, sure, but this is a narrative category. I feel like the action-adventure, the story of Fury... I don't know if it's
necessarily a strictly narrative category.
Well, as long as they tie in together, I think that, yes, the gameplay fits in. But for me, the Fury as this kind of revenge story that eventually becomes a... I get it, like, you can either take revenge on these people who captured you or save them.
Yeah,
a
it's really shallow story.
And then you go in space and put on your Gundam suit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's shallow. Don't call it shallow. Because there's the story arc of the rabbit, who we find out he's been doing this whole thing for his daughter the whole time. And there's an option for you to choose to give up and not complete this mission and stay with the voice. I don't think this is a shallow game. I think it was designed to be a boss rush, and they knew that, and they gave as much depth as possible that would be allowed by its genre pick, like its model.
When you say the option to stay with the voice, was the voice that angel thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that ever a viable option? Like, who's going to say,
you
I'm
could
gonna
end the
stay
game
with
there.
Yeah, but who's going to say, all right, I don't want to see half of this game. I'm going to stay with the voice.
I tried to do that. I wanted to stop playing the game, so I was like, oh, I saw the ending. Nailed it.
Like, I get in terms of story, it's there, it's available, but the gameplay precludes taking that option.
But are you gonna now pull this more narrative than you want it to? Like,
my issue with Fury in general is just that there are these series of cool battles, and they're tied together. They give you this kind of explanation of who this character is, and then you just kind of beat them up in a almost shonen kind of way. Like, you're just going into this tournament, beating dudes up, and then you leave, and it's just like they give you a little bit of narrative hook, but I don't feel like it's any more than like a Dragon Ball Z episode. And I feel like I'm playing an arc of Dragon Ball Z, just beating up on the villain of the day. And then ultimately there's some sort of resolution, but I feel like Jotun, in the same genre of kind of this boss rush game, gets more out of it. Like
if we're gonna call it action adventure, I'll say that Fury has action but not really adventure, and Jotun delivers both. And if that's how we're gonna play this, I would be fine with saying Jotun stays over Fury.
Okay.
Can we make that a reasonable compromise?
Yeah,
sure.
That sounds good for now.
I don't like
that way, for just for the sake of brevity, we can.
Yep.
Get
Fury
along
gone,
with this.
Jotun stay. So
What
we
about-
got Mark. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know anything about Dark Souls. I didn't play that one, so that one's pretty much up to you guys.
I think that Dark Souls doesn't really belong here, because the best part about Dark Souls is getting into its story and into its details, into the nitty-gritty. And that's not what I'm thinking about with an action-adventure game. I think, yeah, there is cool combat, but it's combat that's just supposed to kill you a bunch of times until you memorize what to do. And I don't want that to be our action-adventure winner.
That's fine with me. I guess we don't have someone who's like a super duper deep Dark Souls person, but people who are way into Dark Souls, I'm sure would yell at me. But none of us are those people, so Dark Souls is gone. We now have Jotun, Mark of the Ninja, and Mass Effect.
Now, I'm curious about Mark of the Ninja, because I think that this game, first of all, this game was inspirational, and so it's like one of the new standards to which all other stealth games should look towards on how to execute a stealth sneak kind of genre. It's so hard to compare Mark of Ninja to Mass Effect and Jotun because of how fundamentally different they are as games. Actually, I'll say that Mark of Ninja and Jotun have some similarities because they are essentially level based, but Mark of Ninja has so many different ways you can just blow things up and kill people in Mark of Ninja, or you can just completely pacifist run that game. And Jotun forces you into conflict. Mass Effect forces you into conflict where you've got to just slug it out and have a battle. So I think Mark of Ninja is really cool, but I'd probably be ready to strike this one off next.
Yeah, all right. I'm willing to accept striking off Mark of the Ninja, but let me say why I wanted it in here. So, did you guys see The Raid, the film?
Yes. The Japan, is that a bunch of kids on an island and they're just killing each other? No,
that's Battle Royale. The Raid is basically, you have this team of SWAT people who have to fight their way up this building. That's the whole story. That's all you need. And I think it's an incredible action movie. And I'm thinking of Mark of the Ninja like that, right? Where the story's sort of ancillary to the action you're getting. I think Mark of the Ninja had some of the best just raw gameplay that we saw this year. But if we're thinking of this as a category that combines both gameplay and story, which I think you have to if we're talking about action adventure, in the same way that, hell, just because it's in my head, Pirates of the Caribbean, right? It's a good movie, good story, but it also has cool sword fights, right? But maybe Mark of the Ninja is really sort of dropping the ball in that sort of larger story question. But I think it's a great action film in the same way that The Raid was. Maybe not necessarily the best, considering its dearth of story.
Yeah, and the story that's there, it's not like it does not have the story. It's just that it's not especially compelling.
Yeah, it's
crazy
not
all along.
story. Yeah, we've seen
there is
before.
that cool illusionary scene at the end where you're starting to see things, and your tattoo is taking you over. But
Also, for the adventure side of things, I don't feel like there was much to actually explore in Mark of Ninja.
No,
you at most had like a fork in the road.
And that fork was mostly gameplay dependent.
Yeah, it's like, are you going to take the kill everyone option or the stealth option?
How many throats are you going to slit?
That was really the question, and the only question.
Throats. Okay, Mark of Ninja is gone, which leaves Mass Effect and Jotun.
I mean, space opera is a pretty good synonym for action adventure.
It is, and I think that high action, just kind of swashbuckling nature of Mass Effect when it's at its best, where you're kind of meeting all these cool characters who they've got their depth, but most of their depth is just being like this cool sci-fi stand-in, like Rex. Rex is awesome. He is the best action adventure character. He's this frog man from a distant planet who regenerates super fast and threatens you and then joins your team because he's a badass mercenary. That's awesome. That's the most action-adventure thing.
I think Garrus is actually the most action-adventure here.
He does eventually. Like in Game 2, when he's Archangel, he's shooting people.
Oh, my God. But no, we can't. That's out of bounds.
Out of bounds. Sorry, spoilers for Mass Effect 2. Sorry. That game's like 10 years old.
As much as I love Jotun, I feel like it cannot stand up to...
Laser beams?
No. Okay, so are we kind of cheating because Mass Effect can go to all these different worlds and it's a universe? Sorry, it's a galaxy-wide fight for the survival of not just the human race, but of all races working together. Yeah, it's this epic grand narrative. So yeah, Jotun has a really tough hill to climb.
Yeah, I mean it is what it is though.
I'm gonna strike out Jotun, but I want to give it a good fight. Okay, so I want to say Jotun, as an action-adventure game, has exciting combat, a world worth exploring, given that it is different in size. I think if we scale it appropriately, how small Jotun actually is versus how big Mass Effect actually is, think about how much empty adventure there is in Mass Effect. Think about how much just completely empty adventure there is. Go to some fuck-off planet and collect minerals. Great adventure. Right?
Sometimes you find dead bodies and then you loot them.
Yeah, great. If you play Mass Effect, and you stick to the story proper, where you're going across 5-8 planets and meeting your allies, and you really don't care about those horrible collectible missions, and even I, as the Grindfather, say those missions are kind of shit, collectible-wise. If you look at Jotun story proper and Mass Effect story proper, they're not that far off, because there's great adventuring in both, a world worth exploring in both, because if you explore in Jotun, you're going to get additional depth of story. You're going to get collectibles that matter, like extra power-ups and extra abilities, and these are going to really make an impact on how you play the game, where the adventure actually adds to the action. If you can get all these extra abilities, it's going to make your action better. If you're good at the action, it makes your adventure better. And that happens in Mass Effect as well. I think Mass Effect actually doesn't quite do that part as well as Jotun, but I think everything else about Mass Effect is just going to outweigh what Jotun was capable of based on just its sheer size and what it could deliver.
Yeah, and this is where AAA games just kind of bring it to bear. Is in action adventure, they can just beat you to death with more, with dollar signs.
True.
And
you talk about big dollar games,
this is a genre where that's effective. If we had to stack Final Fantasy IX up against, if we happen to play To the Moon this year, that's a really difficult choice. Which one would win? Because the dramas they're both so impactful, because the narrative is deep enough, and both are very affecting. But with action adventure, to some degree, it's how many bombs can you put on the screen at the same time?
More is more.
More is more. It's more. More is more.
Yeah.
in this genre. So Mass Effect wins. Sorry, Jotun. Mass Effect is our best action adventure this year. And so now let's go to some of the smaller categories. Let's leave stuff like best character for a little bit later.
Sounds good.
How's about, here's a fun one, a little break. Best culturally inspired game.
Now, I like this, but I want to see if we can revise the category slightly.
Okay.
We'll tell you what, why don't you read the nominees, and then I'll say why I think we should revise the category.
Okay, right now we have Never Alone, Jotun, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
All right, so here's why I think we need a slight category revision. Because I think Never Alone is culturally inspired in that it's trying to depict a certain culture. But I think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is more culturally determining in that it's sort of decided what skating culture would be moving forward, not only inspired by it. So I don't just want culturally inspired, maybe most culturally important or culturally valuable game, perhaps.
It was both documentarian and author at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So best culturally, how would you phrase that as a category name?
Most culturally important game? Most culturally valuable game? Something like that.
Oh, but then when we phrase it that way, I can't
I know.
beat Never Alone if
I
we
know.
phrase it that way.
But it becomes a discussion that's at least because it's not really culturally inspired per se. We can leave it.
I mean, it's inspired by skater culture.
All right, we can leave it. We'll leave it. But that's just the question I want to.
Yeah, I can't.
I think you get more value, Pete, out of making your point than actually changing the.
Yeah, because you
category.
want to say most culturally important, and then you're like, well, skater culture is more important than indigenous peoples. Clearly.
No, it's not. I'm going to go ahead and cross out Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
I'm actually going to say one thing in favor of Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
Sure, whatever, man. Say.
If we're going to, I want to at least give a nod to the culture that inspired Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, which is every 11-year-old out there who just wants Sonic to be the fastest. I'm done.
Gotta go fast.
Awesome. Can we? I mean, this is really a 2-horse race, isn't it?
What are the horses?
Never Alone and Tony Hawk.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think Jotun.
I'm fine with it too, and it's because Jotun actually isn't trying to make you understand the Norse mythology. It just says we want to tell a great story, and Norse mythology was happened to be the perfect stage for us.
Yeah.
No, I definitely disagree with that as the reason, because there is an entire section where there's a level that just shows you different Norse gods as constellations, and then a section that just makes you walk through the creation myth. Like, some of it is educational.
Yes, it is.
But I think that ultimately the mode of storytelling in Jotun as this kind of series of discrete levels that kind of give you a little snippet of Norse culture, I don't know that it's as cohesive as Never Alone, weaving documentary with gameplay, with mechanics, all of them kind of going towards the same thing. Never Alone from the ground up does not work if that culture is not the thread tying it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 weaves together 6 shredding with an amazing soundtrack and a compelling cast of characters.
This is not the best soundtrack category.
It's not.
But it's going to come back around when we get there, though. Rest assured.
So the 2 things for best culturally inspired game are Never Alone and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. What do we do here?
I'm going to vote Never Alone.
I think it pretty much has to be Never Alone, given the first-hand accounts that were wrapped in the sort of overlooked nature of the culture they're describing. I mean, we already had 6 years of the X Games at this point, and then I had a third point. Oh, and the centrality of that cultural message to the game itself. I think it's just important to acknowledge at the beginning, like I did, that Tony Hawk helped establish skater culture for a huge audience of gamers that probably had no other contact with it.
I
Gino,
just want to say,
you gonna argue against Never Alone here?
I just want to say some stuff. It's fine if Never Alone wins. I feel like it should win, but I just want to throw some stuff out there about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. It starts with some footage of skaters shredding, shot through fisheye lenses in a way that skaters would. I think there are definitely unlockables. It captures these characters, these larger than life skater characters,
like Twist,
Tony Hawk,
further.
All these different characters that really capture that unique moment. It managed to tie Rage Against the Machine and Public Enemy and Anthrax, and they were all in the same thing, and somehow it all worked as a cohesive whole, and they made sure that the mechanics rewarded you for the one thing that really matters, and it's shredding, and rewarded you with the only thing that matters, money.
Is this a preview of our Game of the Year discussion, Gino? Like, you seem really on board with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
No, I just want to throw out, I think it's weird how the criterias that we're judging Never Alone by, cohesiveness and authenticity and from the ground up designing the mechanics around a culture, it's weird that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 fits those categories as well.
It's true.
I like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 better as a game. I like playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 more than I like playing Never Alone.
True as well.
But ultimately, Never Alone, as one of the first documentary games that I've ever seen, like kind of trying to blend these things in an educational way that is not necessarily centralizing fun as like the primary objective here. Like, education is more primary than fun in that game. I think it's a pretty important thing, and I found that like more compelling than all the sick kick flips in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. So I wanted to just say Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 weirdly fits this category. I think it would, in another year, it might have won it.
Yeah.
But Never Alone's in it.
Weird how contentious that one actually ends up being.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Very weird.
Okay. So, next category. Let's go eeny, meeny, miny. Best soundtrack. Best soundtrack. How's that sound?
Okay.
Next category.
Okay.
We have Mass Effect, Final Fantasy VII, Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, Mirror's Edge, Fury, Silent Hill 4, Ori and the Blind Forest, Tengami, Thumper, Final Fantasy IX, Sonic Chronicles: the Dark Brotherhood, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
All right, let's chop this bad boy down.
I'm going to remove Sonic Chronicles: the Dark Brotherhood.
Yeah.
It has terrible music.
Yes, it does.
Putting that there.
I don't know.
Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. Best use of the Space Jam theme.
Yes.
But other than that one song,
no.
and there's that weird boss music that comes up once or twice.
Yeah.
But other than that, not a great soundtrack. Mirror's Edge. It's got that cool song.
That one cool song at the beginning.
Yeah, that's about it.
But, yeah.
Still alive.
But
Silent
Hill
really.
4.
I never listened to
it.
That music doesn't really exist.
Yeah, that's like what?
It has some Akira Yamaoka jams, and he does great work, but it doesn't hang with this gang. Ori and the Blind Forest, is that? How do you like that?
That has to stay.
It was good. Yeah.
Okay, has to stay.
Is it time to invoke the one Final Fantasy rule again?
Yeah, and I think I think 7 probably stays.
I think 7 stays because I think it's going to end up being the most influential of these and most lingering of these. You hear about, like Eris theme, Tifa theme, One Winged Angel theme. The fanfare is the best. Is it the same fanfare victory in 7 and 9?
It's always the same fanfare. It's just different instruments.
Right.
But for me, it just comes down to the fact that I think Eris's theme, some of the world map music in 7, I love the music in 9, but I think 7 has just some songs that even when they get remastered or played on different instruments, they just hold up. Like, Aerith's theme, I think, is one of the best songs in any Final Fantasy game, period.
And I think Cosmo Canyon counts as one of those remastered songs. It's not that great in the actual game, but when you play that thing on the piano, like I'm doing right now, it is gorgeous.
I'm cool with that.
So let's just hang on to Final Fantasy VII for a while. Final Fantasy IX, cool.
Mass Effect.
I never paid attention to the music in Mass Effect.
I don't think it's going to hang with any of these other ones.
Yeah, it's got a sweeping orchestral theme that, it's ultimately
it's got the opera part of space opera, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's like Halo. Like, they just toss in some piano and stuff in the background. Who cares?
So, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Okay, wait a minute.
To stay.
Tony Hawk's got to hang for a bit. I'm looking at Tengami and Thumper. I think both of them.
Tengami was pretty excellent, but I'm cool with cutting it.
It was pretty excellent. I think it was very limited. I think it only offered one thing, and I think Thumper did the same thing.
I think, the question to ask about Thumper is there enough variety there?
No. I think that the reason Thumper is still on this list for me is that the centrality of the soundtrack, the fact that you are making the soundtrack as you play.
It's your control over it.
Yeah. When you are playing, even though Thumper, if I had to listen to Thumper without playing the game, I probably would think its soundtrack sucks. But when I am making those sounds happen, it is incredible. And so, since this is best soundtrack, I'm okay with cutting Thumper. It's not like best synergy.
Best audio synergy. Yeah.
That'd be a very specific category.
It would. And I'm fine with losing Tengami as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think its soundtrack actually is quite good. That was the thing that stood out to me the most in that entire game, but I'm fine with losing it.
So now we're down to what, 4?
We're down to Final Fantasy VII, Fury, Ori, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
I don't think Ori's going to take this one.
I don't think Ori's going to take it either, but I want to say something really cool about Ori was that I think Ori did the most for environmental music out of all these. I'm thinking about the fire change gravity level, having those nice rhythmic tones. I'm thinking about the level after you get shot out of the tree where you light up the water, and now it's an underwater level. That was just one of the most perfect soundtrack contributions to an environment ever. And I think Ori did a lot of things right, but I'm not going to go out and buy the soundtrack to Ori and the Blind Forest and put on my iPod.
Sure.
I have had Final Fantasy VII songs on my day-to-day iPod. I have lifted to the Sephiroth theme. So
have we, now that we have 3, have we reached another situation where we each have our favorite?
I think so.
Okay.
I think we have.
All right.
So let me argue for Final Fantasy VII. Then I'm guessing, Billy, you're probably going to stump for Fury. And Pete, you're probably going to argue for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
I am.
Guess?
Yes.
Okay. I think that Final Fantasy VII's music, it has a great breadth to its songs, but also just a lot of hits. Aerith's theme, Tifa's theme, One Winged Angel. Some of these are some of the most iconic songs in gaming's just soundtrack history. And it's hard to compete with something that kind of set the standard for what sound in games could be. These songs in context, like when CD audio was a brand new thing, this game was one of the games that kind of made you realize what the heck that could mean for soundtracks going forward. And there is an entire concert series that is propped up by the backbone of Final Fantasy VII soundtrack.
Now, hang on a second. I want to push back a little bit because I think that's kind of a low blow.
It's
Tony Hawk and Fury don't even have a chance to have like a say against that.
No, I mean, scope, like size of the economic reality of what this game did, I don't think is the most compelling of arguments. But I think the fact that it's resonated, those songs have resonated through the years in such a extreme way, I think is compelling. And I like what the the different notes that each of these songs can kind of hit, where you have this kind of slow melody with Aerith's theme, you have this driving boss music with One Winged Angel, you have Cosmo Canyon with this almost vaguely Native American theme, and all these different elements, Midgar and its seedy kind of background music, the world map that kind of has its slow lull. All these different moments, I think, make a really rich tapestry when it comes to the soundtrack. It tries to hit more emotions, and I think it hits them than most. And this is, again, something you're allowed to do when you're a 40-hour game, in a way that these other two games kind of can't afford to, even though they're quite good as well. Go ahead, next person.
Billy, you want to go down the list?
Sure. So I think that Gino makes one point that Gino made that I will agree with, and also say similarly that happened for Fury. And if nothing else, this should put Fury and Final Fantasy VII as the top two. Is that unlike Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, there was an element of the story that was told specifically because it had music designed to tell it. I'm going to say somebody else had some ideas about what music or a lifestyle should be, and they sort of mishmashed that into Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. But when you have a unique soundtrack created, inspired by the same artwork and development that Fury was born from, just like from Final Fantasy VII, in having Nobuo Uematsu and other artists like sort of birth the flavor and the world that is this game, just in virtue of its own substance, is going to put both of these games head and shoulders above Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Now I'm going to speak about Fury in particular. The easiest comparison that I can make here is that the soundtrack for Fury did work just like the soundtrack for the new Tron Legacy movie. All right? Like, that soundtrack did so much work for that film. This soundtrack puts in so much work for this game. I think that so much of the story and so much of Ryder's character is given to us through the tones, the subtle tones, and environmental staging paired with this music. And yeah, to some, it was a walking simulator. And to me, it was a time where I got narration and music that was setting up my themes, setting up my motivations. I'm thinking about a couple of times specifically. I'm thinking about the in-boss fight against The Burst, that song which was called Now You're Mine. That was the one that you hated a lot, Gino, that particular fight. I'm thinking about the in-game, the walk-up music for The Voice. That one is that one is titled Make This Right. That one is probably one of the most compelling songs on that soundtrack for what sort of shift is happening in that one. And the last one that I want to take note of is the very first boss fight music in Fury that is setting that sort of gritty, just antagonistic, because really you have to be compelled from the very first moment of the game why you're doing all this. You don't really have motivations other than the jailer is the key, kill him and you'll be free. But the music tones here give you that impetus to move. And if you think and you just listen to the first song that you get as you leave the prison cell, that just compels me in so many ways to continue with this. I know I'm going to be fighting against unbearable odds. I know it's going to be every step of the way someone's acting against me, and the music in this game reflects its true nature so much more than I think either of these two games music just enhance and are built from the same stuff. Now I think Final Fantasy VII has great music, and if it wins, I'm not going to be upset. But Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 does not do the same thing with its music. It had great artists make great music, and then someone said, you know what kind of reflects the idea we're thinking? This other people's music. And they just sort of smashed two good things together and made like a good stuff sandwich. That's not going to cut it for me.
And sometimes they smash bad stuff together.
Sometimes they smash bad music together. I'll say that there is one song on Fury's soundtrack that I don't like. There's songs on Final Fantasy VII soundtrack that I don't like. That doesn't make them bad songs. I think they're just straight up garbage songs on the Tony Hawk soundtrack.
All right, let me jump in here. Let me say some things. I don't like Tony Hawk's soundtrack. I wouldn't listen to Tony Hawk's soundtrack. It's bad music. Right? That's a given.
Okay, so we're done, right?
That's not my point is. My point is, you could listen to that soundtrack and I think understand 90% of what it means to be a skater in the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 mold. I think this soundtrack fits the purpose of the game, the project, what they're trying to do so precisely. I think it's just an incredible achievement in sort of, and it may just be, Billy, you're sort of it may just be curating a playlist. They've made an incredible playlist of shitty music that happens to fit this game perfectly. So I want to acknowledge that. I want to stump for it. I want to support it. And now I want to accept its inevitable defeat.
Okay, I want to be the person who defeats it because, God,
Now let me say one.
There's a place where everyone can be happy.
I know. It's bad. It's terrible, terrible music.
In the whole freaking world.
Now, I did not play Final Fantasy VII, and thus I'm unfamiliar with the soundtrack. So this one, you guys are going to have to adjudicate between yourselves for these last two.
But I think it's just going to come off to like a runoff vote, and Pete's going to have to just flip a coin in his head. How are we going to do this fairly?
Billy, they're both good soundtracks. I think they're both great soundtracks in their own respective ways. I don't like the breed of techno that Fury largely occupies as much as I like the piano ballads that Final Fantasy VII does. And that's what it comes down to for me. Is I like Fury's soundtrack. It's hard for me to how do I explain I've been listening to these songs for 15 years or 20 years, almost 20 years now, and I've been listening to them sometimes a couple of times a day for almost that entire length. It's hard to have an honest opinion when I've been able to re-listen to those same themes over and over and over again.
I'm not going to fight you on that. I'm going to say that I've also listened to Final Fantasy VII music for a long time. And in some ways, I've used that music as a healing mechanism. Like, that says a lot about Final Fantasy VII's music.
So Billy, where do you stand? Do you still think Fury's soundtrack is better? Or do you like Fury a whole lot and, you like the soundtrack? I think everyone here liked that soundtrack.
Yeah, it's good.
I just don't know. We've got one of the best soundtracks of all time that it's competing with.
And that's why I think this is such I can't say that it's unfair and then vote against it because it's unfair. I have to find a really good reason why I think Fury's soundtrack needs to have an edge. So
I feel like you're going about this backwards yet again. You're starting with the premise Fury should win.
Fury should win.
Now let me find a reason why.
Okay, that's fair. So let me go ahead and take an even bigger step back.
Okay.
I'm thinking about a game. Okay.
Tell us more about Tron Legacy.
No.
Maybe you should start there.
No. Okay, so here's the direction that I'm going to take. And I don't think I can go anywhere else besides this, so this is going to be my piece, and then I'm going to kind of bounce. So when I hear a piece of music, or I look at a piece of art, sometimes it's going to speak to me, and it's going to spark creativity in other places. Okay? essentially what Amuse does for anybody else. And this is particularly poignant for me now because I'm building a D&D campaign and like I have to create an entire world. So of course I'm listening to music and I'm looking at pieces of art to inspire me. I'm thinking about how I think this game went through development stages and how Final Fantasy VII probably went through development stages. And I think this soundtrack contributed more to how the finished product actually got there from development to finished product. I think the Fury soundtrack probably put in actual more like structural integrity to this game than something like Final Fantasy VII. Because if you had taken out maybe a couple songs from Final Fantasy VII and replaced them, no, hang on, I gotta retract that. That's not fair to say. You can't like take out One Winged Angel and Tifa's theme and say just put something else there and see what happens. No, that's
yeah.
Not
If you composed another excellent song and put it in its place, so that might also be excellent.
Let me take a little step back and say, you could have built all of Final Fantasy VII and done the music last, and I think it would have still come up with the same soundtrack, and it still would have been great, and it still would have had this 20-year legacy. And I think that the development phase of Fury's music played such an integral part of what that game's life really is, that if you just measure up just the audio, just the track list, and just who's covering it on YouTube, it's easily Final Fantasy VII. But that's not what this is about. When I think about best soundtrack, I think about what soundtrack put in more work to make this game as great as it is. And Final Fantasy VII soundtrack does put in a lot of work. But I think Fury's soundtrack is in many ways the lifeblood of what's going on here with its aesthetic. And Final Fantasy VII, like I said, is good too, but it doesn't carry as much weight as Fury's does. That's why I'm going to vote for Fury for best soundtrack.
I guess am I the runoff vote then?
I think you just have to be.
So.
All right, I'm gonna have to go with Final Fantasy VII. Billy, you make a compelling argument, but I think just maybe this is an unfair conclusion, but the existence it has outside the game is indicative of its superior quality and staying power. Now, if we want to redo this podcast in 15 years and people are covering Fury soundtrack, I am willing to change my mind.
I just think it's a low blow.
I know, man, but
I mean, this is the nature of the
Hey,
with us.
I'm not fighting.
This is how it is. We can talk more about Valda's story later if we want to. It'll make you feel better.
God, that soundtrack was dope.
It was quite good. So, on to the next category. We've got, I think, a nice corollary to best soundtrack, Prettiest Game.
Yeah.
So, this is some sites, some Game of the Years have best graphics or best graphics technical, best graphics artistic. We just go prettiest. What made us happy? What made our eyes happy when we looked at them? So, in the category of Prettiest Game, our nominees are The Witness, Firewatch, Inside, Fury, Ori and the Blind Forest, Thumper, Devil Daggers, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, Silent Hill 4, and Tengami.
All right, let's call the herd.
Bye-bye Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
Why is Devil Daggers on here? Can I ask?
I thought that the pixelated style of just kind of capturing Doom.
It's not pretty.
That's fine.
Goodbye.
I thought that there was something to it.
If you like gray and brown, you will love Silent Hill 4.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye Silent Hill 4.
I think Thumper needs to go because the way that it is pretty can not show up if you're bad at the game.
Fair. I think it's just unsustained too. I think the first level of Thumper was maybe the most compelling visual thing I've seen this year. But by the second, third, fourth, fifth, I'm bored. I'm out.
That's fair. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I think Thumper just as like a radical decision for how a game looks, like choosing an art style where you're going to be a silver beetle on this track flying through space, like just coming up with that as your central aesthetic, like, and the track sprouts tentacles, like that thing is striking.
Yes.
But yeah, it is it's diminishing returns.
I think Inside too, it has a very good style. The style fits it. The style works for what it's doing, but I don't think it's necessarily a very pretty style.
Sure, yeah. It's more grotesque than it is
pretty. Yeah.
I wouldn't call it grotesque, but maybe like intriguing and sort of awe-inspiring.
But there's like
I think the pretty isn't where it goes into like a flesh monster. I think the pretty is where there's
a griminess to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like grimy, and it's almost like a shadow box. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about shadow box. Go with Tengami a little bit, and I think this game puts up a good fight, but just isn't gonna muscle out some of the other contenders on this list.
Yeah.
I think nice honorable mention, Tengami. You were beautiful. You did tons of stuff with shading and shadow, but just strictly being like a pop-up storybook, I'm looking for a little bit more.
So I think the next place to go might be to compare The Witness and Firewatch.
Yeah.
Because they're both sort of going for a similar sort of, quasi-realistic aesthetic. And I would say I think The Witness pulls it off just a little bit better than Firewatch.
I also agree The Witness should stay over top of Firewatch.
Works for me. I loved Ollie Moss's work in the just kind of the colors of Firewatch. The palette of that game is pretty impeccable. But The Witness just it could win this category for me pretty easily. Firewatch is strong though.
I'm okay with Fury going, and this just crushes me to vote against Fury ever. But the thing those worlds were made beautifully. But I think I'm going to agree with Gino here that the camera shenanigans that happen in many ways inhibit you from getting what's really beautiful about that world. They did some weird camera stuff, and I liked it. I thought it was cool, like very God, what's the fucking painter with the upside down steps and stuff?
Escher.
MC.
Yeah, MC Escher.
It was really
up on the ones and twos.
Not really a painter, but
or you know what I mean,
like
the illusionist kind of stuff. It had that aesthetic, but when I'm looking at Ori and I'm looking at The Witness, this is gonna be hard for me.
Yeah.
So I think the question now that we've just got Ori and The Witness, 2D or 3D?
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, that's it. It's not that. It's not 2D or 3D.
Yeah.
For me, they are both pinnacles of their respective forms. Like Ori, the animation is excellent. The different environments are beautiful.
The use of light and shadow.
Yeah, light and shadow, all that stuff. Ori is amazing. The Witness, though, like, that game uses its prettiness. Not only is is it a main draw for me to play The Witness, is just how it looks, but without looking the way it does, there are whole segments of the game that don't work. Like, if the shadows are not that crisp, there are elements of, like, the world that the puzzles don't work if the shadows aren't that way.
You can't solve the puzzles if the game wasn't built beautifully.
The sense of everything being designed and everything having a place and there being a logic governing all of it, both mechanically for the puzzles, but also the world itself, because the world itself is a puzzle. It just works on so many levels that I just have a hard time not picking The Witness. It's pretty, and also that beauty invokes deeper thought.
Okay. So I also love The Witness, but I want a podium for Ori.
Okay.
I think that every single modicum of Ori in the Blind Forest is visually breathtaking. Isn't it also a hand-drawn world? Yeah,
I believe it is.
Yeah. That carries some weight for me. That it is more of an art. That is more of a work of art to me, and The Witness is more of a masterpiece to me. Does that make sense? How those things are different?
No.
Okay.
I just want to throw out, I don't think that distinguishing between hand-drawn art versus art made with a 3D tool
I'll back off.
And even if we boiled it down to some sort of degree of difficulty question, which I don't think that's an oversimplistic assertion, obviously, and I think we'd all agree.
Me too. That's not what we're talking about here.
But even so, I don't think effort could be factored in, even if it were the case.
So I'm going to say that there were parts of The Witness that weren't very pretty. The colors level. I think that the swamp level wasn't that pretty. I think that the sun level had nothing really going on visual aesthetic wise. I thought
the color palette, the reflectivity of the sands, I thought was gorgeous.
No, I mean, like even actually in the sun, like underneath where like the sun goes away, you're basically in a dark, spooky cave.
Yeah,
didn't do it for me. There were parts of the game, The Witness, that were not visually gorgeous, and I cannot think of a single step of the way that Ori and the Blind Forest didn't impress me. There were parts of The Witness that really I didn't care for the visual aesthetics, and I think that game has a technical puzzle solving type of beauty, but I think Ori is a more artistic piece. I think The Witness is a masterfully made machine that's built with this like great purpose and intention. But I think as far as just straight up visual beauty, it's going to come to Ori for me.
So here's why The Witness gets my vote. It basically just boils down to a single idea. Grandiosity. So at the moment where you stand sort of at the top of that mountain and you look out across this whole massive environment you've been traversing through, there's nothing in Ori, I think, that can match up with that moment in terms of just sheer grand visual spectacle. And again, right, this might be the case of, well, we have to look at, cost, size, development, all those questions. But again, we can't really make exceptions here. And I think it's that grandiosity of The Witness that puts it over the top for me, as beautiful as Ori is.
Yeah, and for me, it's just those moments where, like, I see an object off in the distance, and all of a sudden it takes on a new meaning when you look at it at a slightly different perspective, in a way that, like, for example, in The Witness, there was a section where there's kind of a woman reaching up, and then if you look at it at the right angle, the gigantic mountain seems to be reaching towards that woman if you look at it at the right perspective. Or moments where, like, a tree, if you look at it from the side, looks like a person. And if you look at it from the other side, it's a burned husk of, like, just a tree. And there are so many different perspective tricks that just, if any bit of The Witness was off, they don't work. But the fact that they were to fit so much density of information and color and just different aesthetics into this same place, it's a masterpiece. That is the thing about The Witness that I found the most compelling, was how beautiful the world is and how they blend exploring it into the gameplay. Like, you don't really appreciate The Witness, I don't think, until you're looking through every single segment of that world trying to see if there's a circle that leads to a line somewhere.
Now, I don't want to cheapen in any way my fight for Ori, but I'm not sad that The Witness is winning. I think The Witness made everything that was beautiful about it beautiful in two ways. One, it was nice to look at on a very superficial level. This game was gorgeous. And then everything that was beautiful for more than one reason. It had visual aesthetic appeal, and then it had this masterful intention. So I'm going to agree with a lot of the points that you guys made. I just feel like I would have done a greater disservice to us if I didn't fight for Ori. Because I think Ori would have easily thrashed the competition here if we didn't have The Witness.
Yeah, it was definitely a fight worth having.
So the winner for Prettiest Game is The Witness. Next category. Let's see. Next category. How's about Best Performance / Voice Acting?
So,
we have Hannah/Eve, her story. The Stranger, Oddworld. Professor Oak from Pokemon Snap. Freya, Jotun. Henry and Delilah, Firewatch. The Rabbit, Fury. And Framped from Dark Souls.
Does anybody like Stranger?
No, I don't like Stranger.
No,
Gotta go to town and
right.
collect my bounty.
It's just that like deep raspy nonsense.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut that one.
Yeah.
As much as I love Professor Oak saying, "Great work,"
I was gonna
Close.
Professor Oak
Close.
has the most catchphrases of anyone on the list.
Yes, he does. Professor Oak is unstoppable when it comes to that.
Yes.
But I think he might have 4 lines.
Yeah, no, it's not best catchphrase. So we have a problem.
Framped
The
from
Rabbit?
Dark Souls, we can probably cut.
That's fine.
I think Framped was in there just because he needed to have the same kind of mention that Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood has.
Shit.
There's no voice
We have a
acting.
late nominee. We have a late nominee.
Who says anything in that game?
Shadow? Can it at least be Shadow?
Shadow the Hedgehog.
Sure.
From
No,
Sonic.
this is fitting. This is fitting because
And-
Gino, last
and
year
he's cut.
you did write in a nominee and immediately cross it out without lifting your pen. And this has to be that moment that we had last year.
Yep.
In an
Sonic.
entirely text-based Game Boy Advance game. Best voice acting.
Well, Shadow the Hedgehog, you tried. Sorry. You spoke to me. Wait, you mean your games didn't have voice acting for Shadow the Hedgehog?
No, this is something you might want to look into a little bit more closely, Gino.
Oh no. Okay, so what's going next? I mean, Freya for me, I think was an excellent performance, but Henry and Delilah, Hannah and Eve, honestly, the Rabbit and Freya, both, they're good performances, but I don't think Her Story or Firewatch work without the performances that those voice actors turned in.
And I think Freya was overshadowed in Jotun, as far as I'm concerned, by the narrator anyway. I don't think the narrator would win this either, but for me, that sort of old English narration was much more impactful in terms of the game.
Wait, what?
Fair.
You mean
Jotun.
the narrator in Jotun?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason I really want to fight for Freya, but I'm gonna let her go. Actually, yeah. So let's order this the right way. I'm gonna fight because I think that the delivery was a work of art, and it's in a language base that. Okay, so they chose what language they wanted this game to be as an artistic choice. And when they give you language options in the game, they don't have voice actors that do multiple different languages. They have one voice actor, and the text is the language that you get, what it is translated into.
Mm-hmm.
And so in many ways, I like the artistic choice to say, we're telling you this story, and you get a translator. So you can choose your translator, but our voice is important to us for what's going on here. So I liked that a lot. And if maybe Freya can stick around for another round of cuts, that's okay. But if she doesn't win, I'm not going to be upset about it. But would you guys be okay with letting Freya stick around to maybe the final 3?
I mean, we can cross off the rabbit.
Then we
Cut the rabbit
first,
Freya's in the final 3.
We'll do Freya.
and then we cut Freya.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let the record show. I
The rabbit
put a
is
line
crossed.
through the rabbit first.
Now,
And now Freya.
yeah, for me, Freya held more weight than Hannah and Eve. But I recognize that this entire game was a single person's performance.
Yeah,
But is
and
that-
if this was just best voice acting, but it's best performance / voice acting,
Mhm.
like Hannah and Eve is that game.
Yeah.
Is that kind of too cheap, though? Because
I don't
if
think
we
so.
had a category that was like best jumping, of course Thomas Was Alone would win. Like the whole game was jumping. So the fact that this whole game was just voice acting, was just
but
one
it-
person's one man, or in this case one woman performance.
Yeah, but if she did a bad job, that game wouldn't be good at all. But that game is very compelling, largely because of how great a performance she turned in.
Okay, so let me try to make this comparison. If you guys think this is unfair, I'm okay with this. But what if we only got the script of the story and we didn't actually get the we didn't actually get the vocal delivery? Is this breaking the rules a little bit?
Would have a better script. I would still pick.
I mean, that's not what we're. This I thought this whole category was here to honor the voice actors and actresses, and
I don't want to portray it like that.
Like I don't know that the fact that one script is better than the other has anything to do with it. I think that
fair.
Henry and Delilah both turn in, like, the voice actors that perform those characters turn in great work.
Yeah, they do.
Excellent work as well. They managed to make these two characters come alive and make them feel like their relationship feels real in a way that two characters who are never in the same room together probably shouldn't. But man, Hannah and Eve is just such a virtuoso performance.
It just feels a little too forced for me. It feels forced, and they had to use a sort of a cop-out story reason of, half of the audio got pulled, so we only have half of it. And I just noticed, as someone who has been in theater for so many years, from a performance perspective, I saw the threads. I saw the stitches and the seams, and you shouldn't see that. I saw that this was, when I looked at the performance of her story, I was reminded that I was playing a game. And when I was playing Firewatch, when they were speaking, I was just enraptured by what they were saying. And I was completely bought into what Firewatch was all about. But for Hannah and Eve, there were times where I saw that I was playing a game. I like encountered the fourth wall and knew that I was just an outsider looking in. And
but
Henry and Delilah do more for me.
But is that the script's fault, or is that the acting?
I think it's the acting.
Fault.
I think it's the acting. And if I'm going to be specific, I think that the dialogue interactions between Henry and Delilah's voice actors were fluid and organic and natural. And I think Hannah and Eve's character, the voice actor, possibly through no fault of her own, had a barrier of delivery, which was that she had to be holding up one side of the argument and artificially placing things that the listener can't really take for granted that they're there. Like a person's looking at her funny, or a person's doing it, and maybe that makes it a good what's the word I'm trying to get? Maybe that makes it the best attempt at making this real and organic. But like I said, I could just see some of the pieces that this was not actually real. And so when the performance, I mean, even like the slightest misstep off of that takes away so much from the actual performance and the voice acting. I think that Henry and Delilah's never missed a beat. And some of the clips from her story were forced and a little bit artificial for me. And it made me remember that I was playing a game, that this was not real.
Pete, you've been quiet.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I don't know about Billy's claims to theater expertise and, seeing the strings and everything. I don't have that. I'm not questioning your credentials, Billy. I don't want it to seem as if I have no idea what your theater experience is. I'm saying I myself do not have it. But where I will agree with Billy, I think that the time to reward Hannah and Eve may be in one of our later categories. And I think just here in terms of sheer delivery of lines, sheer performance, I would still go with Henry and Delilah.
That works for me. Henry and Delilah, best performance / voice acting. So, let's go ahead. Why don't we mosey on over?
Do you want to do one of the fun categories?
I thought we would save those for kind of the lead up to the
stretch run.
Run.
All right, sounds good.
So let's go to best mechanic next.
We have best mechanic and best character then?
No, I think character is a stretch run.
Okay.
So let's go best mechanic.
Okay.
We have all of her story.
The sole mechanic the game was based on.
We have environmental line puzzles in The Witness, Paragon and Renegade in Mass Effect, homing daggers in Devil Daggers, the Materia system, Final Fantasy VII, Overwatch's support classes, the apartment, Silent Hill 4.
Now, I have a question. Do you mean the way the apartment shifts along with your character?
That and the first-person perspective versus the third-person perspective of the rest of the game.
Gotcha.
The way it is presented, and yeah, not the haunting, like that mechanic kind of sucks, but the looking out the window, like all those different elements.
Gotcha.
Billy, did you just put something from Dark Souls?
What? No, I didn't put that.
Okay, something from Dark Souls. We don't have a mechanic listed here. It just says something from Dark Souls. We'll have to, maybe by the end of the time I read off these mechanics, someone will come up with a real mechanic, not just something Dark Souls.
Something Dark Souls.
But we also have slamming from Thumper, the ATE system from Final Fantasy IX, manuals, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, limited abilities, Jotun, Pester Ball, Pokemon Snap, and layering abilities, Fury. What is that
Now,
mean?
where is the Sonic Chronicles Dark Brotherhood?
Oh, Sonic Chronicles: the Dark Brotherhood. We also have Big the Cat's Attacks in the Sonic Chronicles:
Just
the Dark
all of them.
Brotherhood.
Everybody loves fishing.
All of them.
Oh, no. We have environmental movement mechanics, Sonic Chronicles: the Dark Brotherhood, and it's been crossed.
There we go. Well, all right.
Because that's a bullshit mechanic. Who decided that?
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, so let's lose some things.
Manuals?
Unless Dark Souls gets an actual
No, we can get rid of Dark Souls.
thing. Okay. We are not the Dark Souls people. I'm sorry.
Then we
Can we
can
get
get
rid
rid
of
of the
manuals?
apartment.
Yeah.
Manuals from Tony Hawk. Yeah, I thought that it's excellent that they gave you a way to chain together like different tricks, and the manuals are kind of the glue.
Yeah.
But
That's
we are not shredders.
No.
I think the
What
apartment.
is layering abilities?
I want to talk
Fury?
about Fury later because you had something in Fury, and I think this is
Okay.
another hot audible. I want to come back to Fury later.
I think we can
Okay.
get rid of the pester ball. I think it would be better if it were more violent and you could actually do damage to the Pokemon,
You could see
no.
if you could see their HP dropping
Right.
and they actually fainted.
but you
It's
can't.
bleeding.
It's like, oh my god, Pikachu, what happened? But you can't. So
You ran into a door there, Pikachu.
Oh no!
Paragon
They
Renegade.
get so mad.
Paragon
They get
Renegade's
so
gone.
mad.
Didn't we hate that?
You-
Paragon
yeah,
Renegade's
we hate
gone.
Paragon
That.
Renegade. Bye.
Homing dagger.
Homing daggers, goodbye.
Yeah, I just like the mechanic of getting the gems, like kind of crowd controlling and also picking up gems, and then that moment when you've got enough gems for homing daggers to kick in, it's just a cool moment
Yeah.
the first time it happens. But yep, cut that.
Overwatch.
Overwatch's support classes, I just want to say for a sec, I hate most first-person shooter, like online first-person shooters, because I am bad at headshots, and I'm not I'm actually not like terrible at it, but that is not what I enjoy in shooters. Like, I was the person who would crouch walk all over the place in Halo and just whack people in the back of the head because I thought that was more fun than making headshots. And the fact that they came up with a bunch of classes that are fun to play and fun and effective and useful for your team without needing to be great at shooting, I think is a triumph. But I've played Splatoon, and I like
Yeah, it's just better.
Splatoon better
It's just a better game.
to me.
The ATE system, I like the
Yeah, I'm
ATE
fine with
system,
losing.
but it's mostly just to set up cutscenes. You know what I mean? It's not really a great mechanic per se.
Yeah, it's a cutscene delivery system. I just think it's pretty novel to have a story delivery system that's opt-in in that way. It's useful. It's a system that I wish more RPGs would adopt. But I don't think it's, as fun as some of these other things. Slamming from Thumper?
A little too simple.
A little bit too simple, but then
It
again,
feels so
I want to
good,
do a
though.
throwback
It does.
to I want to do a throwback to Valda's story for real here, because I think last year this category was won by Valda's story's skill cancel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
And that was essentially just you moving down really fast. And slamming from Thumper is also just you moving down really fast.
Just not as good though, for whatever.
Just not
for
as
whatever
good.
reason. It's just not as good.
Yeah.
I think
slamming in Thumper makes when you do it correctly, that is what makes Thumper its most visually spectacular and rewarding. Yeah. But unfortunately, I don't think it's as compelling as some of these other things. I think the limited abilities in Jotun, like, they're cool, but I don't think...
Do we really want to award them for having less of them?
Well, no. Let me explain. I put 2...
It just got uncrossed. This is unprecedented.
It didn't just get uncrossed. I didn't see it crossed.
I saw it crossed. Was it crossed,
so,
Gino?
It was crossed. I uncrossed it because Billy started
First,
talking.
I want to address my Fury sort of play.
Address your Fury.
Because Gino originally just said parrying in Fury. I thought that was way too shallow. Because that game's not all about parrying. As the person who probably played this game the most here, I just want to just at least nod a little bit to Fury and say that it did more with its actual controller layout by having you able to use multiple abilities at one time. The abilities that you had in Fury in a vacuum were not that compelling, but you chaining them together got you something more. That said,
guns plus swords.
That said, we can cross out Fury.
Dodge. Okay.
I'm going to keep Jotun because I think that the mechanic of you having a finite number of charges for your abilities forced you to be more creative. It gave you no other choice than to have a diverse experience, and every single boss fight made me use every single ability because I didn't have unlimited of them to use. Sure, if I combined Freya's speed and Thor's hammer every time, I just win every fight. But you can't do that. You can only do that a couple times. Because you only have 2 charges of them each, or at least 2 times to use them in tandem, you now have to use Heimdall's shield to make that opening available to you. And sometimes you have to trigger a vulnerability from far away so that you can get the opportunity to use those by using maybe Odin's spear. Like, you're required to use all of these abilities and use them as efficiently as possible because they gave you so many limited uses of them. And I think that is a more worthwhile mechanic than any of the skills themselves. The fact that they were limited in number and they forced you to be diverse.
I think that's a pretty compelling argument.
Yeah, that's so.
For keeping it for right now.
We can leave it for now. The apartment, I'm not going to argue for.
Me neither.
I just think that the apartment as a concept, like, that's the only worthwhile thing in Silent Hill 4 to me. And seeing this space slowly decay as the game goes on, and the ways it decays, I think are pretty compelling. Like how the things that you look at with joy the first time you examine them as the game goes on become more and more unsettling. How when you look out the window at first, it looks like a normal day, and the more you look out the window, you start seeing things floating by and weird stuff going on. I think that the idea of this space being haunted and you starting to kind of gradually realize it and have it affect you is... I would love to see a better game do it.
Yeah, no,
okay.
Gino,
I'll give you that.
Definitely think it's definitely compelling, but I think it's very obviously the second best environmental-based mechanic on our list.
Yes. So we are left right now with all of her story, environmental line puzzles, The Witness, the materia system from Final Fantasy VII, and limited abilities from Jotun. What do we cut? I'm okay with cutting. I mean, her story... That whole game
is that
mechanic.
Yeah.
I think,
but I didn't like that as much as I liked the other 3 things.
Yeah, I think we can cut it, and I think it's because it boils down to this being a 2-piece game. You have a search engine, and then you get narrative, and it was cool, and it's funny that the entire game was the mechanic, but I think it just can't compete with stuff like the last 3 here on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly elegant. It's just I didn't enjoy it as much as
it's
some
not
of this other
as
stuff.
fun.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think environmental line puzzles is going to stick around.
Yep.
Agreed.
I think the next one to go is the materia system. Now, I love grinding. We know this.
We know
The
this.
materia system lends so well to grinding. The fact that you could just hot swap you could hot swap one character into almost an entirely different class by just throwing some sexy new materia on them that you've spent 83 hours grinding up full life and like double magic and all that shit. Level 5 health so that you could go up against the weapons and have just 2 materia so that when they do that attack that deals damage based on how many materia you have, and so you get blazing 7s on all Sorry, I got a little bit
Sorry, we lost Billy. I cut the materia system. I think it's a good system. I think it holds that game together and its combat together pretty well. I enjoy some of the subtleties of kind of combining different materials together to get better effects. But ultimately, my problem with the materia system is that it renders most of your character's differences irrelevant.
I'm going to agree there. I think...
And
yeah.
it smooshes them together, and the benefits that you get from that smooshing I don't think are as compelling as kind of the radical reinvention that some of the other games have done, like Final Fantasy VIII with its craziness, or Final Fantasy X. I think of the games that smoosh characters down into interchangeable pieces, I think the materia system actually does the least for me. It's kind of that and the Esper system from Final Fantasy VI, but like the job system in 5, amazing. The sphere grid in 10, amazing. The junction system, for me personally, is amazing. But 7, materia system works. It's functional, it's cool, but environmental line puzzles.
So I'm happy.
That shit is crazy.
I'm happy I got Jotun to the final 2, but I'm going to go for environmental line puzzles because that entirely changed the whole
It's completely
game.
different. Oh, yeah. When you discover that, the whole game is different.
All of a sudden, I'm like, maybe you deserve to throw some recorders with navel-gazy stuff in it. Because you know what? You managed to hide in the clouds a puzzle that if you are standing on the right part of the island, I think there are multiple line puzzles in the clouds, depending on where you're standing.
There's one.
It's puzzles
There's
the whole
only
way
one?
down.
I think there's just the one.
Crazy.
I think there's just the one cloud puzzle.
It's fucking nuts. The attention to detail.
That was great.
Yeah.
So the best mechanic is environmental line puzzles. Okay, let's go ahead and let's go to our personal category. Oh, actually,
what?
Last thing before
wanna do
we
best twist?
do our best twist.
Or should we bang out? Oh, we have to bang out worst story quickly too.
I thought worst story is. Yeah, let's do worst story. Actually, let's do the best before we do the worst. Best twist.
Best twist.
Best twist. Vivi is dying. Final Fantasy IX. Eris is dead. Final Fantasy VII. You were crazy all along. Mark of the Ninja. Vince Carter was half man, half amazing, half robot, and half traitor all along. Barkley, Shut Up and Jam, Gaiden. You were the bad guy all along. Fury. The Reapers. Mass Effect. Brian Goodwin is dead. Firewatch. Captain Blue was evil all along. Beautiful Joe. Room Mama. Silent Hill 4. And You Go to Space. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. The Dark Brotherhood. I'm going to cut Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to cut Room Mama.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut Captain Blue was evil all along. Or are you okay with that staying? Does anyone want Captain Blue?
No, it's good, but it's one we've seen.
We can.
I'm gonna cut
I think we can cut the Reapers because there had to be like a grand destruction. So we kind of like knew there had to be some huge environmental disaster impetus. So we got it. It was the Reapers.
It just, I don't love that twist. I love a lot of other things about Mass Effect. That twist is not one of them.
I think we can cut.
I'm going to cut You Were Crazy All Along.
Another one we've seen, yeah. Vince Carter, we can drop.
Yeah. As much as I love Vince Carter in that game, it's not a great twist.
Now, does the Fury twist suffer because, again, you go to space and put on your Gundam suit?
Yeah, it does.
No, well,
for me.
It does for me.
I feel like that's not the right way to describe the twist.
You were the bad guy. All right, how would you describe the twist, Billy?
God, can we narrow down the Final Fantasies and then come to this?
Sure.
I just need a little bit of time.
I mean, Eris is Dead is one of the...
It's a cultural touchstone, but I don't think it's as impactful or twistful as Vivi is Dying.
Yeah,
if we're gonna pick two,
Eris
it's
is
Vivi.
Dead I think it's the most impactful because it was the twist that most people saw first.
Yeah.
But I think Vivi's twist is actually the better twist.
I would agree.
So I think the Fury one, like, it's telegraphed from a mile away.
No, so like unless I can come up with a better one, that's
jail.
okay. But actually,
I just don't think.
I'm just okay with this going. It's not going to beat Vivi and it's not going to beat Brian.
No.
Yeah, and Fury. The thing that's great about Fury is not the story. It's the part where you play it.
Yeah.
If you're into that kind of thing. So we've got Brian Goodwin is dead and Vivi is dying.
It's a tough one.
A lot of death in this category. A lot of people dying tragically. And ultimately for me, you know where I'm going to stand on this?
Yeah, I think we can see yours coming.
But I think Brian Goodwin, they managed to humanize that kid in a pretty good way. And the moment when you find his body is probably the most impactful moment of Firewatch, one of, if not the end of the game. Because it's this lonely situation where your character is finally fully cut off from Delilah. You're in the bottom of this cave, and up until now you've always had a voice in your ear, for the most part. And all of a sudden, you can't share what you found, and it is the most impactful thing in the whole game. And how it slowly unfurls where you find his shoe, and then you find him. It's an incredible scene.
I think Vivi is Dying is a great twist, and it has a huge impact on the game. But I'm just going to, exercise my prerogative to make a personal choice here. I've always had a soft spot for father-son narratives, and this is a kid who was basically dragged to the woods with his father. Maybe didn't necessarily want to be there precisely, but, sort of wanted to spend time with him. And ultimately the father, an accident happens and he basically kills his son. And then he sort of goes crazy in the woods as a result. So I'm just going to exercise a personal prerogative and vote for Firewatch as a very compelling father-son narrative.
Billy, where do you... So I actually made the Firewatch argument, not the Vivi argument.
Yeah.
I guess
the Vivi argument.
The Vivi argument for me is that the moment you find out that Vivi's life is limited, that is, for me, one of the moments that makes Final Fantasy IX a great story. It is kind of the narrative anchor by which all of the themes kind of make sense, is when you give this character suddenly a very fixed, finite lifespan. The game's central thrust of kind of live every moment like it's your last comes together in a way that if you did not have a character who was terminal, you might not be able to tell that story as effectively. And it also allows a nice parallel between Kuja and Vivi on multiple levels that kind of comes about because of that twist, and then the subsequent twist with Kuja's character. So I think Vivi is Dying is kind of the axis around which Final Fantasy IX turns, and ultimately the end of that game, when he actually does pass away, is the payoff, whereas Eris's death kind of happens immediately, and then you get like a later on reference, she was doing something when she got killed. I think Vivi is Dying just really propels that story in a number of different ways. Even though it might not hit as hard as the Brian Goodwin thing, because there wasn't this mystery built up around it, I think the slow burn of seeing this person, once they realize that they're dying, kind of come to grips with it over the course of a story is really compelling.
Mm-hmm.
So, Billy, you are the You were the tiebreaker.
So I feel like Brian's situation is Brian's situation for me is probably the best actual twist.
Yeah, I think as a twist, like that moment where it happens, it's this one moment and it's done. Whereas the Vivi thing just kind of keeps playing itself out for such a longer time.
Yeah, and so to finish my thought about Brian's death, I think that in many ways, Brian's character and the potentiality that he's alive and well is one of the one or two sort of bright lights in your hope for there being a happy ending in Firewatch. And when that light is snuffed out is one of the hardest hits that you get among the games on this particular list. I think Vivi's mortality, or sort of destined expiration date, as probably is better described, makes me think about the replicants in Blade Runner. And while that reference brings a sort of emotional resonance for me, because that's a really important film for me, and we kind of got hints that Vivi was artificial from very early on in the game, right after we meet Vivi. And there's hints that we know that Vivi's one of these creations, and as soon as we know that these creations are finite in duration, so we, the player, know that Vivi is probably finite in creation. We really don't know whether or not Brian is alive or dead before the story tells us. But before the story tells us Vivi's dying, we've probably figured it out by now. So as a twist, I think it fails a little bit. I think as a motivating story point, it succeeds, but I don't think it fits for twist. I don't think it fits for a turn the story takes to do something different. So I'm going to say that Brian's death is probably going to be the better twist out of the two.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I think Vivi's moment, like where we acknowledge that, was where it beat Firewatch in best drama. And I think that Firewatch, really, this moment is what allowed it to hang with a game 4 times as long, or 8 times as long.
10 times as long, actually.
Well, it depends.
Yeah, it depends on if I'm playing it.
40 times.
When I'm playing Final Fantasy IX, it takes about 7 hours, so they're about the same. So we are now up to worst story.
A lot of strong contenders in this category.
A lot of strong contenders.
A lot of winners here.
Yep. Barkley, Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. Beautiful Joe, Mirror's Edge, and Silent Hill 4.
I'd like to just take a second to say that no game that I picked is on this list.
I'd like to take a second and say that 4 games that I... No, 3.
No, yeah, I
three,
picked Joe and Mirror's Edge.
Yeah.
Which, let me say, when I picked them, we were all excited about both.
Yes, that's true. They just happen to be better in terms of gameplay than story. It happens.
I think Mirror's Edge isn't going to win this. It's a bland story, but it's not necessarily terrible.
Most mediocre story, Mirror's Edge. Like Beautiful Joe, I don't think is bad enough.
No, it's not.
It's just not bad enough.
I don't think Silent Hill 4 swims with these fish, even though it's really bad.
Does
it swim with these fish?
It's incomprehensible.
I actually think Barkley's actual story is kind of better.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's an okay story. So now we've got our 2. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, and Silent Hill 4. So, Billy, you are our story explainer. It's been a while since we've played these games. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to try to explain what happened in each of these games, just to see which one's more incomprehensible.
Okay. All right. Wait, 30 seconds each, or 30 seconds for both?
30 seconds each.
Okay, thank
you
God.
got 30
Holy
seconds
shit.
to explain Sonic, and go.
Okay, so you're Sonic, and you go really fast. And Eggman has been a dick, but you think he's dead and everything's Gucci, but it's actually not. And you get some friends, and you're going to go on an adventure through some places that are kind of reminiscent of actual Sonic games, but not really. And then you fight some bullshit RPG setup, and you have stats and abilities that don't actually matter because it's all about how well you're.
Okay, there's your 30 seconds. There's your 30 seconds.
We've got literally none of the story.
We got none of the story. I feel like you veered into mechanics there. You wasted some time.
That's all right. That's all right.
But now you're going to make it up. You have 30 seconds. Describe Silent Hill story and go.
Okay, so you are this creepy, but at the same time completely vanilla guy who gets locked into a room. He can't get out. He doesn't know what's going on, but all of a sudden a hole appears in his bathroom, and he climbs through to a nightmare land where all of a sudden he's got to figure out these weird mysteries about these multiple people that are getting killed simultaneously. And oh shit, he's like number unlucky 13 or some fucked up bullshit narrative that's not difficult to explain at all. Okay, but how do we actually get these story points? It's all through bullshit little handwritten letters and notes and blood scribbles on the wall. And the very point that makes it a Silent Hill game is that at some point it takes a weird left turn and the whole world becomes a nightmare escape. But that only happens because you're getting closer and closer to actually solving the mystery.
Okay, I gave you extra time there because you seem to be in the middle of something.
I feel like you're about to cut me off, so God.
No, I didn't cut you off because Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. So Silent Hill 4 is attempting some ambitious stuff. It makes no sense. A man has his umbilical cord's in a box, and he loves this room.
He thinks it's his mother
mom,
for whatever reason.
And he's been murdering people, and then he's a ghost and he's killing people, or is he a ghost?
He needs like 13 souls. I don't know.
It's bad. It's a bad story. But you know what? It's bad in a Silent Hill sort of way. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood just makes me depressed. It makes me sad for the people who had to write it. It makes me sad that it exists. Like, you go to space, and then there's ancient echidnas.
Like, when you betray the first 80% of a game because you have to make it make sense in some fucking way, so you gotta go to space for that.
You know what, also? Sonic Chronicles is bland.
Yeah, I think that's the key.
It's bland. Yeah. It's mediocre. It's like a knockoff Mass Effect story in some ways. Or like a knockoff BioWare story. It's not that bad. Silent Hill 4 is a fucking mess. Oh my god. A dude thinks a room is his mom. There's a Wikipedia for this game, and I read it, and I barely know what's happening.
So what do we think's more important? Silent Hill is ambitious, but incomprehensible. Sonic Chronicles makes sense, but only because it's a super vanilla story.
Well, I think it's worse than that. I think Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood needs to. Okay, so like if you were to play through Silent Hill 4 The Room a couple times, you'd probably actually grasp what was going on in its story. And I bet somebody out there can tell a cohesive 30-second narrative of what goes on in Silent Hill 4. That's never going to happen for Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
I mean, you can, but you shouldn't. Why would you? So,
if we're going to say,
what I come down to,
if we're going to say story that shouldn't exist, definitely Sonic.
Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, at the end of the day, I just mostly felt sad for the people who had to work on it. I felt it was workmanlike. But you know what? I can respect that the people who were working on it were talented. Like, they knew how to craft a story. This table might not be a compelling table, but it's a table.
It'll hold shit.
Silent Hill 4, somehow, it's not a table. It's not a table. It's not a table.
I'll give you, based on not being a table, I will see Silent Hill 4 as the winner.
It's the winner. Silent Hill 4, you're the worst story. The room is his mom.
Sure. Whatever.
What?
Fine.
What?
I think the silver lining here is that at least Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood still hasn't won shit tonight.
Yes.
Give it time.
Okay. So now, worst story. We don't have a worst game. if we want to come up with the worst game category and just nominate Sonic and then give it to Sonic,
we
I'm
can,
fine with
but
that.
yeah, I mean, we don't really.
We don't need to do that. People know our
Yeah,
sentiment.
it's a hopeless exercise.
So now let's go to our awards, our individual awards.
So what's
Or
what's
do you want to
left?
go to best character?
Yeah, there's only our individual
Best
awards and
character?
then best character and then game of our year.
Should we do?
Yes. Do you want to do best character first
Yeah,
or
we'll
individual
do
awards?
best character first.
Yeah, let's do best character.
Okay. So the nominees for best character are Vivi, Charles Barkley, Tolly, Rex, Garrus, Delilah, Big the Cat, Professor Oak, Stranger, Beautiful Joe, Cloud, Henry, and Bob Burnquist.
All right, let's call the list.
By Big the Cat.
Okay, because he's not Shadow. So he doesn't have a chance.
I want to make a hard cut right now and say that we're going to have just one Mass Effect character, and I want it to be Tali.
I want it to be Rex.
I want it to be Rex.
So it's Rex.
Even though I love Tolly. It's Rex.
I think that we're going to have to fight about this. Oh, wait, no, we don't, because you're literally just 2 versus 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
we don't have to fight
I'm
about
done.
it.
Charles
Tolly's great. I just like Rex better.
Charles.
I also
Barkley-
like Rex.
Charles Barkley's a lot more compelling than you'd think, but that's not
Yeah.
compelling enough.
That's fair. A million trillion B-balls bouncing.
Oak? We can probably get rid of Oak.
He's stuck around long enough.
Nice job.
You were close.
Stranger.
Yeah, we can. He's a
I think some
stag.
people can get cut before Stranger.
Steve.
All right, if you want him to stay longer than Bob Burnquist, I understand why.
I love that there's a real person on this list, and he wasn't cut first. Bye, Bob Burnquist.
Beautiful Joe's a pretty obvious one-dimensional nerd archetype.
Yeah, that's fine with me. As much as I like his panache,
Right? He's got
I
style.
like the cut of his jib.
Yeah.
So how about Cloud?
I'm fine with
I
that.
think
Cloud's compelling.
Yeah.
He's good.
But he's not VV good.
He's really just a memory
Really
case.
good.
And if we're going to have to cut a Final Fantasy character so we have just one, there's no contest who the Final Fantasy
Go with
character
Cloud.
is in this category.
Okay, Delilah or Henry? We still have
I
to
feel like we
keep
got to
the
toss
same
them
thing.
both, actually, because one doesn't work without the other. I think if you examine Delilah's character, sorry, let me rephrase this. If you examine any of the other characters on this list in a vacuum, they still work, and Henry and Delilah don't work without each other.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut Delilah before Henry just because I feel like Henry has more going on.
Can we cut
with
Stranger
his
before
character.
Henry? Not that this order
Yes.
matters at all, but
Stranger gone.
Yeah, Stranger's
So
not going to
now-
make the cut.
We have 2 characters left, Rex and Vivi.
If I could unstrike Stranger and cut Rex before Stranger,
no, you can't.
Does anyone want to pick a character who isn't Vivi?
no, it's got to be. It's just so Vivi.
Does anyone want to die tonight?
I
It's
like. Look,
Vivi.
I don't think it's as big as a blowout as it's seeming to appear right now. But yes, I pick Vivi too.
I think it is. I think it's kind of a
I don't
shit
think it's-
show.
I don't think it's that big of a blowout.
I think it is.
No, Rex is great.
It's a
Rex
firm
is great.
win.
He's the best Mass Effect character.
It's not a blowout.
I
like
think Rex
He's the
has
best.
the most hidden layers.
He's an onion.
He is an onion.
Just like an ogre.
He sort of looks a little ogreish.
But I feel like Vivi's just got this in the bag.
Yeah, that one was pretty obvious from the beginning. Like, good
Okay.
showing from Bob
Best-
Burnquist.
Yes. Way to show up.
Way to show up.
So the best character is Vivi from Final Fantasy IX.
Okay. So we go down the list
Okay, now
now of
let's-
the fun ones.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's go to our fun ones. So first up, we've got Billy's Grindfather Award.
How come I'm first?
Because you've got the same category.
Okay, I
Pete's
guess.
and I's are yours is established.
Hang on, my
We have to
fucking.
save the dramatic.
You have a
reveals.
character trait.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So
announce your nominees.
yeah. So, welcome everybody. This is now the Grindfather Award show. So for anyone,
I'd like to say hello to Tony Allen.
for any listeners at this point in the show that maybe haven't, fully caught up on your deep listens backlog, that's okay. We'll give you plenty of time. But the reason why this category exists is because I fall under a particular demographic, a particular archetype of player. I'm a completionist. I like to be on that grind. And I like to know that I have entirely mastered one particular element of a game.
He likes seeing numbers go up.
I like seeing things become the best. Okay? And there's some games on this list that satisfy those particular needs. The nominees for the Billy Rothard, aka Rothgar Grindfather Award are Mark of the Ninja, specifically for its leaderboards, Mass Effect, for its essentially completionist collection and filling out the codex, The Witness for solving every puzzle, Final Fantasy VII for grinding out materia, Dark Souls for collecting souls, Fury for that entire game being just a boss rush of grinding skill, and Ori and the Blind Forest for getting 100% map completion. So, since I'm just the entire driver of this entire category, I'm going to say some really cool honorable mentions are Dark Souls and Ori and the Blind Forest. I think those are going to be two of the first to go. Dark Souls, collecting souls was fun. I got so much pleasure and enjoyment out of finding a spot in the world where I could just easily kill monsters and go to a bonfire and just repeat that loop 85 times until I could level up again. That was just really nice and concise, but it just wasn't grindy enough. Like, it was a really one-dimensional grind, you know? So Ori and the Blind Forest, map completion, that game was visually aesthetic and beautiful, and I loved exploring every inch of it. But my fatal flaw with Ori was that it was possible to lock yourself out of the game. It was possible to finish the game and not be able to go back and replay it. Now, you guys played the special edition re-release or whatever, and I actually did not. So maybe Ori should be higher up on this list if I had played the right version of the game, but it's possible.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to beat the other stuff.
No. I think the next one to go is Mass Effect, because I think while it did have one of the highest ceilings for Grindfather, it goes in directions that have no meaning. That's saying a lot, coming from a perspective of grinding. Next, I'm going to say Mark of the Ninja is going to go, because while I did get top 1% in all leaderboards, there was a 0% chance of me getting to rank 1 because people were able to hack the game and falsify their scores. All right, so we're left to 3. Three are left right now. It's going to be completing all the puzzles in The Witness, the materia system in Final Fantasy VII, and the entire game that is Fury. The winner of this category is going to be Fury, because none of these games...
Because it's your category, and you can pick it.
I'm going to give an actual good reason for why. The things that make Fury a good grind is by playing the game the way it's maximally intended to be played, which is maximum style points, maximum flavor, most efficient and precise combat. Like, the better you are at the game, the better you are at grinding at it. Then you have an entire game mode designed to cater to your needs, which is the competition mode. They made an entire mode just for that. Final Fantasy VII's materia system satisfies all of my actual grinding needs, because that's where the most feedback loops come in. Same thing goes for The Witness. I can collect every collectible in The Witness, and I can grind every level in Final Fantasy VII, but that doesn't hit everything for me.
You need to also be better than someone else.
Being a Grindfather is about achieving is about like maximally achieving yourself. And I think that Fury made me get better at the game so that I got better as a player, and then that feedback was what I was really that's what I was really looking for. And so cherry on top is Fury gets to win something. Yeah, sure, it was my category, but fuck you guys. And
I can't dispute that this is your
category. That's a good point.
And the other games had honorable and well fought journeys to be here, but I think Fury gives me everything that I could ever want in a game that I repeat and replay and remaster over and over again for the sake of the achievement of that game. So I'm done. That's my piece. Fury, you have been awarded the Grindfather Award 2016.
All right. So now it is time for my award. I gotta say, first off, I was pretty restrained. I almost had Gino's Final Fantasy IX award for a game that is most Final Fantasy IX, and then just gave it to Final Fantasy IX, but I didn't do
How many games would you have put in as nominees for that category? Would it just be 2, Final Fantasy IX and Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood?
And then Sonic would immediately be crossed off, and we'd have our winner. But instead, we have the Platypus Award for game that should not be. So the reason I came up with this award is I am fascinated by games, just things that nature, Charles Darwin, something should have stopped it from happening. At some point, someone should have stepped in and said, "Nah, that's too crazy. Nah, that's dumb.
Shut it down.
Shut it down. This is stupid." And I feel like I just really appreciate those black swan moments where everything just goes ass up. And my nominees for this year, for the games that should not be, are Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, and Pokemon Snap. Now, Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, it violates all sorts of copyrights. It was made by basically a handful of people as a passion project in their free time. It uses Charles Barkley, Space Jam,
the NBA,
MJ, Michael Jordan's Chaos in the Windy City. All of these things as canon, and takes that as a basis for making a game, not just a game, but a JRPG. It has Al Bhed. Bill Cosby's in this game.
Yeah, he is.
On the other hand, we have Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, a game where multiple people from one of the most talented RPG manufacturers in the entire world spent multiple years of their lives making a DS role-playing game starring Sonic the Hedgehog, Rouge the Bat, Big the Cat, Shadow the Hedgehog, Dr. Eggman. They spent years of their primes. People missed seeing their children to make sure that Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood was unleashed, was birthed onto the world. On the other hand, we have Pokemon Snap, a game about taking pictures of Pokemon. This game is wildly successful.
Hugely.
Amongst our age group, it seems like everyone has fond memories of Pokemon Snap, a game where you just walk around taking pictures of Pokemon and hitting them in the head with apples and pester balls. You could go to Blockbusters and take pictures and have them printed out so you could put them on your lunchbox if you wanted to. This game was so successful, they made physical things and put them into a now defunct movie chain, and it made them money. It made sense for them to do that. That should not be. And so, first off, I'd like to eliminate Charles Barkley's Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, because ultimately, only 2 people or a few people had to be convinced that that was a good idea. Mm-hmm. The people who had that made, it is an audacious thing that it exists at all. Like, kudos to you. That game should not be. But ultimately, all that it cost was some people's free time. They were not getting paid for this. There was not a corporate infrastructure whirled up. There weren't marketers called, and there weren't focus groups that were tested on this. It just was a bad idea that came to fruition, and thank goodness it did. On the other hand, we now have Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, which is a dark dark experience. I can't imagine that someone along the way was like, this is going to be a great game. This is going to change people's opinions of what DS RPGs can be. Someone had to know that this was going to be a bad game. But you know what? There's a cynicism there. You know, we're going to slap Sonic the Hedgehog. Both of these are kind of deeply cynical. One of them's Pokemon, one of them is Sonic the Hedgehog. They've got some strong franchises behind them. But you know what? Sonic Chronicles: the Dark Brotherhood, for as bad as it is, ultimately its format is just another BioWare RPG in terms of it's got a weird dialogue system. You can see the skeleton of other games. You know, in our podcast, we discuss all the other better games that this game reminded us of. And, you know, it's a bad game. It's terrible, but you know what? I could be convinced that maybe this was the B team. They convinced themselves, hey, we'll put it out on a low budget. It'll work out. It'll make its money back. So, Sonic Chronicles, you don't get to win this category. Also, fuck you. You don't get to win this category. You don't get to win anything. Pokemon Snap. How the fuck is that game good? How did this happen?
It is, though.
It is. It's great. There's a game where I'm just taking pictures of Moltres, and I'm showing Professor Oak so he can go to his lab, and I don't know what he wants. I don't know why he...
Take that shit
What does he want to see? Why does he want to see the Electabuzzes hurt? Why does he like that? I don't know, but man, it's so fun hitting them with pester balls.
Yeah, man.
Why do I want to look for one of those discarded Blockbuster Video printout machines? Why do I want to own one? Why?
There's going to be some moment in the future, in like 1,000 years, when whatever the version of the future Smithsonian is, they're going to have one of those machines and like explain what it said about us in this time and moment in history.
I want to live in the future where the printouts of those pictures are used as currency.
It's like, here you see the Mona Lisa, and here you see a 2,000-point Electabuzz.
Wow.
Here is Surfing Pikachu.
Wow, what a picture. Nice job. So the winner is Pokemon Snap. It is like the platypus, like the stately platypus. It should not be, and yet it does, and it is glorious. It is glorious. And so, Pete, it is time for your award.
Okay. So my award is the John Paul Sartre Memorial Award for game that is a long title. I have to scroll across. For game that best expresses the ultimate futility of the human condition. There we go. So,
what the fuck are you talking about?
John Paul Sartre. He was an existential philosopher, very dark man. He dated Simone, and they might have been married, Simone de Beauvoir.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
Mm-hmm. So I'll read off my nominees, and then I'll explain my reasoning for the games I selected. We have Inside, Thumper, Fury, Devil Daggers, Dark Souls, and as has become compulsory, Sonic Chronicles: the Dark Brotherhood, which was not nominated for the Grindfather Award, I noticed.
It was a silent omission. It was silently crossed off.
So here's my thinking for this category. This is for games that just really, as you play them or once you finish, make you question, who am I? What am I? What is my place in the universe? And then once you consult that question, to look inward with chagrin to decide that ultimately your life is fairly meaningless. So my rationale for these games was twofold. One is sort of the story or the game itself that makes you consider this question. And two, just the very act of playing it makes you think this through. So in that split, we have Inside and Thumper from the story categories. And then we have, well, I'll include Sonic Chronicles: the Dark Brotherhood there as well. And then in terms of just the act of playing it, we have Fury, Devil Daggers, and Dark Souls. So I think we can cross off Fury right away because it's fairly short, fairly good game. We can cross off Sonic Chronicles just because, as Gino said, fuck Sonic Chronicles. It doesn't get to win anything. Thumper, while a great example of what do we call it, Cosmic Horror, it's ultimately about a space beetle and not a person. If it were a little man running down the track, it might have had a shot in this category. But unfortunately, this isn't about questioning the ultimate futility of the beetle existence. So it gets crossed off. We then have Devil Daggers and Dark Souls. So Devil Daggers gets included because the game never really ends. You could sink, hours and hours into a game in 30-second chunks, and then look at the clock in the future and say, oh, dear God, what have I done? I haven't done anything with these hours. They've just passed by. But ultimately, again, it's fairly short and a decent game, so Devil Daggers doesn't win either. Dark Souls is a game I personally don't care for, but because I didn't play it necessarily, I don't think I can necessarily include it. But I would say that the punishing sheer difficulty should make you question the ultimate futility of your existence. So that leaves Inside as our winner, and it wins most notably for the congealed human ball that shows up at the end and makes you wonder, what does it mean to be a person? Are we all sort of trapped in this communal living that depersonalizes each of us? Has capitalism and consumerism rendered us useless husks of people controlled by our corporate overlords? I don't know the answers to these questions, but I do know they all point toward an ultimately futile existence. So Inside wins the John Paul Sartre Memorial Award for game that best expresses the ultimate futility of the human condition. And there we have it.
All right, and so after those awards, we are down to our last category, Game of Our Year 2016. And so here are the games that we played this year. Mark of the Ninja, Her Story, Oddworld, Stranger's Wrath, Pokemon Snap, The Witness, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Mass Effect, Devil Daggers, Beautiful Joe, Final Fantasy VII, Jotun, Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, Mirror's Edge, Firewatch, Overwatch, Inside, Fury, Silent Hill 4, Dark Souls, Ori and the Blind Forest, Valda's Story, Abyssal City. What?
No, I played.
Get out of here!
I played that a lot this year, though.
Get out of here, Valda's Story. Tengami, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, Thumper, Never Alone, Final Fantasy IX, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. So as is commensurate, I
want to make a motion real quick to uncross Valda's Story, just so it can get crossed out after Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
I think that's fair.
Its motion is sustained.
All right.
Can we
by Sonic Chronicles by Valda's
Okay, yeah,
Story.
just for the record, in that order.
In that order.
Yeah.
A game that does not qualify for this award is somehow more fitting to win it than Sonic Chronicles.
Right, what else can we cry?
I would rather nothing win than Sonic Chronicles.
Rather burn this podcast.
I just make a motion
around us.
that we just take turns and just strike one off, and unless anyone says anything otherwise, we make this real quick.
And I just want to clarify, last year I made this a weird hipster award, and we just crossed off all the games that were recognized as universally great and historically important. And fuck that. It's the games we played this year. I don't want to live in a world where it's we played Shadow of the Colossus and it wasn't eligible to win, so Valda's Story had to win. Fuck that world. I don't want to live in it this year. So these are the games that are actually nominated. We're not trimming it. Okay.
So
I've learned in a year.
Does anyone care if I just go first?
Yeah, go first.
Let's get rid of Oddworld, Stranger's Wrath.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, fuck that game.
I'm going to say we should get rid of Silent Hill 4.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say we can get rid of Tengami.
Okay.
Sure. Beautiful Joe.
No complaints.
That's your own baby.
Overwatch.
I'm fine with
That's
that.
good.
Mirror's Edge.
Yes.
I'm fine with that too.
Since it's right above it, Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden.
Someone had to do it. Devil Daggers.
Yep.
How'd you sneak by Devil Daggers?
It's a shorter title.
That's it. We're going based on title length.
Mark of the Never Alone.
Yeah, Neverland probably is.
Okay, we can talk about.
Yeah, we can just talk about.
Mark of the Ninja.
I think Mark of the Ninja can go.
Yeah, good game, but not the best game. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Yep, that was my next.
Pokemon Snap. It could stick around.
I want it there.
Okay. Then I'll pick a different one to just nominate. Thumper.
Yeah.
We can probably get rid of Thumper. Now is it actually hard?
I like Thumper a whole lot, but that's fine with me.
Now is it actually difficult to talk about stuff?
It's getting hard now.
So we can cross out Thumper.
Is gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then how many are left?
So right now we have Her Story, Pokemon Snap, The Witness, Mass Effect, Final Fantasy VII, Jotun, Firewatch, Inside, Fury, Dark Souls, Ori and the Blind Forest, Never Alone, Final Fantasy IX, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion, real quick.
Okay.
And if Fury's gonna get cut, it's gonna be me who does it.
Fury's gonna get cut eventually, so
it's gonna be me.
Okay.
I'm just gonna be a realist here and say I don't think you guys are gonna let me take this all the way to the finish.
No.
So I'm gonna give it a warrior's death right now, and just
okay.
Bye.
Put him down.
There you go.
Sorry, stranger. Ryder. Sorry, Ryder.
Now I want to say we should probably invoke the Final Fantasy rule here, and say
that's fine with me. And Final Fantasy VII's gone.
Can we drop Mass Effect as well?
I think Mass Effect's going to have to stick around for at least a little bit. It's probably not going to win instantly, but I think Mass Effect, just the sheer following of Mass Effect is going to probably keep it around for at least another round.
Then my next proposal would be Firewatch.
Yeah, I think Firewatch can go.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Can we cut Dark Souls before Firewatch?
Absolutely.
Can we cut Her Story before Firewatch?
No.
I feel like there's not enough there for it to be the best game.
We can cut Her Story, but after.
Yeah, we can
Firewatch.
cut Her Story next.
All right. So what's actually left right now? We got
left right now. We have Pokemon Snap, The Witness, Mass Effect, Jotun, Inside, Ori and the Blind Forest, Never Alone, Final Fantasy IX, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
I think Tony Hawk can go. I think Never Alone also is not going to stand up.
Yeah.
What a weird list we have.
So I want to make a comment. If The Witness wins, it will be against my vehement protests. So if you guys want it around, it can be around. I'm just expressing that opinion.
I want it around after Jotun. I think Jotun. Of these 5 games we have left?
Yeah. How many do we have?
Pokemon
Pokemon Snap, The Witness, Mass Effect, Jotun, Inside, Ori, Final Fantasy. Now we got like 9 right now.
We've got 6.
I like how the order has become like important to us, even though it's completely meaningless.
It is completely meaningless, but I just let the record show.
Well, okay, so
I think Jotun is my.
The reason we're
favorite
doing
of
this
the
is
games
because
left.
we're going to have conversations about all of these, and we're trying to make this as easy on us as possible. So working from the bottom up is what this is really.
Do you have an impassioned speech in you for any of these?
I'm looking at the list, and can you just like highlight them a little bit differently so it's easier to see?
Sure, I will highlight the ones that are still viable.
Yeah, like green them. Yeah, that sounds
Look at
good.
that, man. You know your way around Google Excel.
You jinxed it, Pete. He just fucked it up.
Sweet. Pokemon. Billy, do you have an impassioned speech for Jotun?
I'm trying to think. Okay, I'm going to have to give one, and I want to figure out if it's going to be for Jotun or for Ori.
Think it through. Yeah, because I'm not giving it for Ori. And this is another category where I think we know where Gino's head is at. But maybe not. Maybe he's got a twist in him.
Yeah.
We're at 7.
Turns out I was riding hard for Pokemon Snap the whole
We're
time.
at 7. I mean, I think this is where it's actually going to get hard. We got a lot of good games here. I think the one that needs to go is Pokemon Snap right now.
You know what? Pokemon Snap, it had its due.
That's my impassioned speech.
All right.
It's Pokemon Snap.
Pokemon Snap will be my impassioned speech.
Okay. All right. Pokemon Snap
deserves a speech.
Okay. Should we give speeches
then?
then?
No, because we need to. I think we all need to pick one from this list, and then that's the 3.
Are you? Well,
Nah,
I don't know.
because then
No,
I can't.
think
Then
we
I can't, in good conscience, pick Pokemon Snap.
Okay.
No, we need to.
We need to call.
We need to start having.
Yeah,
All right,
we
I think
call-
Jotun is going to lose to Ori for me, so we can get rid of Jotun.
Get rid of Jotun.
Okay. There we go.
And I think
Okay, we've got
I think
Inside,
Inside's
Ori.
going to lose.
I
Nah, I want Inside there.
disagree.
Yeah.
I'd rather lose the Witness than
I
Inside.
would be very fine with losing the Witness.
I think the Witness has to stick around for a little bit.
All right, then maybe it's
Okay,
time to
then.
start making speeches then.
But
All
there's
right, let's
6
make a
now?
speech. Let me make a speech for Pokemon Snap, and then we can probably cross it off. How's that sound?
Okay,
It'll be a
go.
short speech. So I think Pokemon Snap, I think in a perfect world, in a vacuum where I didn't have to worry about you two Philistines, I would vote for Pokemon Snap and it would carry the day. It's tough in this case to separate nostalgia from the game itself, which is something we've run into before. But I think Pokemon Snap is just the purest expression of video game fun from any game we've played. There are like 3 buttons. 2 of them do the exact same thing. Just one throws apples and the other throws pester balls. But it's just so incredibly satisfying from this perfect. You know what it is? It's cinnamon toast. Cinnamon toast is 3 ingredients. It's bread, it's butter, and it's cinnamon sugar, which I guess is 2 ingredients if you want to count like that. But from that amalgamation of such simple pieces, you get one of the finest examples of culinary joy I can think of. That is Pokemon Snap. Now you can cross it off, Gino.
No.
I've convinced you.
Like, it's probably going to be top 3 for me.
There you go. Leave it. It deserves it.
Okay. Then in that case,
I think Inside's
Wit-
not going to make it.
I think Inside's going to make it.
To top 3?
I'd rather cut the Witness than Inside.
I want to cut the Witness.
Okay.
I like both of those
Okay.
games, but
Okay,
I think
okay. We
that
can cut the
Inside,
Witness.
Man, the end of Inside's really
Right.
good. I don't.
So
Can we
how
cut Mass
about...
Effect now too?
The Witness is cut.
All right, the Witness is cut. I think we can cut Mass Effect. People are going to hate us for this because everyone's going to be like, oh my god, Mass
don't
Effect,
care.
great story.
To hell with them. It's our podcast.
I think I'm going to make a
Effect's great.
good reason why. I think Mass Effect 1 by itself is just kind of fine. Mass Effect as a trilogy is great. But this isn't best trilogy of our year. This is best game of our
And we
year.
only played one of them.
And the Mass Effect universe is what carries the whole series and not just the gameplay of Mass Effect 1.
Yeah, it's not even the best Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 2 is the best Mass
Mhm.
Effect.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're at
we've got Pokemon
Top 4.
Snap, Inside, Ori, and Final Fantasy IX.
Billy. I think it's become time for you to defend Ori and the Blind Forest if you'd like to.
Okay. So I want you guys to remember how first the art style, beautiful, hand drawn, rich with color, dark when it needed to be, right? I want you to remember the music that built a world just as much as its art did, and evoked those kind of natural emotions of, like, maybe after you've just activated the water element, the music itself feels clean and fresh and new. I want you to imagine how mysterious and dark the hidden forest level was, and how sort of earthy and mechanical the sort of fire and magnet world was, right? And how these little pockets of nature and environment were just so artfully created. And now I want you to think about how sick that combat was, and how in the beginning of the game it was kind of one-dimensional, but then just unfolded into this fast-paced but fluid and dynamic. Even though it had one attack feature, like the little sparks that you shot out of your buddy, you actually got so much more, which was vaulting off of these enemies into this amazing momentum building, and sort of the whole world can be connected now because I can just travel so quickly from place to place, and then take that one mechanic that turned the game from a slaughterfest into a more almost pacifist. Now that the world's coming alive again, you can leave these creatures be and just pass by them. in that sort of multi-layered expression of, well, the whole point of this game is to bring the world back to life. So why am I killing things with my little laser beams? Well, I don't have to anymore. I can get where I'm going and do what I'm trying to do without having to kill monsters anymore. And then I want to take the overall story and the compelling sort of villain character that we have in that Mother Blackbird, and how originally this was just like a straight up villain, and then now we sort of had our hearts melted for it, that it was really just protecting its young. And in the end, it made a sacrifice, said, look, I've got to make the world alive again, and this might actually be the best choice for my eggling that has yet to hatch. Right? There's so many things that are working so right about Ori, and it's just this complete package that is loyal to each of its other components. I feel like it's got to at least get top 3 here.
I mean, Bill, you made a good argument. You did. It was fairly convincing. I think one of my biggest problems with picking Ori and the Blind Forest, though, and this might be against the spirit of the category, but we were down this road before last time, I think, with a better game in Volda's story. And I don't think I can in good conscience pick Ori and the Blind Forest for that reason.
Yeah, another year, another 2D action.
Sort of like
game with a sweet combo system.
All right. I said my piece.
And beautiful
we're
art
good.
and good.
We're good.
Good music. So we've cut Ori and the Blind Forest.
And now we have 3.
We are left with Pokemon Snap, Inside, and Final Fantasy IX. Of these, I like Inside a whole lot. I do. But I don't like it as much as either of the other 2 games.
I look, there are lots of things to like about Final Fantasy IX, but as far as I'm concerned, it just wasn't that fun. I didn't enjoy it that much, even with all of its strengths. So
I want to be put in a position, first of all, I don't want to be the guy who picks between Undertale and Volta Story again, even though I loved the outcome last year. But I'm also going to say Final Fantasy IX was not as fun as it could have been for me. So I don't want to be the one to have to pick between the last 2 games and it's me versus Final Fantasy IX. I don't want to be there again. So for the same reason Pete says he's not going to vote for Ori and the Blind Forest, Final Fantasy IX is not going to get my vote now because I don't want to have to not get my vote in 10 minutes when we're coming out of the last 2.
Gino?
Sorry, man.
So, this game, I said it in our podcast on this game. It is my favorite game. Period.
You could. Okay, I'll say this before you start. You could win me. I am winnable here. Okay. Pete, maybe not be, but
I'm not. I'm not winnable, but I am acquiesceable. If you win Billy, I will acquiesce to the selection.
Okay, let me make an argument, because I've made this story argument. You guys know the story. Yep. Let me make an argument that Billy, I think, could have gotten into if he was not playing in fast forward and with all of the
Help me see what I missed, Gino. Help me see what I missed.
There's a depth to the combat system that I don't think anyone other than me really has ever explored. In this podcast of us, not like I'm not like
only Gino has seen game. The real Final Fantasy.
I'm not a master of this game. Like I just mean of this podcast. Sure. Like there are certain abilities that are non-intuitive that allow this game to become something very different. For example, there are the killer abilities that allow you to do extra damage against specific enemy types, which allows you to spec every specific battle, like for every specific boss, you get like a 25% up to 50% damage boost just for picking the right abilities for the right fights. So it rewards you for having a knowledge of the enemies you're up against, to the point where you can be 10 to 20 levels below the recommended level and beat bosses at the end of the game simply by using the killer abilities and elemental strengths and buffs effectively. There is an elemental system that is not necessarily super intuitive. There are certain enemy weaknesses to elements, and also elements imbued in your item in your weapons and some of your armor, that if you're paying attention to those values, it can double your damage output. You've got a bunch of abilities that allow characters to do really weird shit. Like Amaron, for example, is a character who he has an ability called Return Magic, that when he gets hit with a spell, he can actually cast that spell back at the opponent, even though he is not a magic character. He eventually gets an ability, I think it's like Power Throw, that doubles the power of his throw ability, which is super weird. Freya gets an ability that allows her to jump higher, which causes her to just stay in the air longer and avoid bullshit on the ground. Quina has abilities like Millionaire that allow she to just rack up money for you. There's cool synergies like casting Reflect on your whole party and then having Vivi learn Reflect ×2, which allows him to deal more damage when he bounces spells off your own team than actually casting stuff on your opponents. There's subtle differences between the two White Mage / Summoners that allows for some weird gameplay. For example, Aiko has an ability called Might that boosts the power of your characters. She has offensive white magic and holy that Garnet doesn't have. She also has a summon in Carbuncle that, depending on what accessory you have equipped, does different things. Like it can cast Vanish on your whole party. It can cast Protect on your whole party. It can cast Reflect on your whole party. And then I think the last one might be Auto Life, but I'm not sure what the last effect is.
I thought it was regen, maybe? Like auto regen?
It might be auto regen. She also has a summon Phoenix that heals your whole team, revives your whole team, deals damage to the enemies. And after you cast that spell the first time, anytime your party gets wiped for the rest of the game and Aiko's in your party, she can sometimes randomly cast Phoenix and revive everyone, which was how I beat the game the first time when I was super little. Was I got wiped out and then I got a lucky dice roll. You've got a status system that applies to a whole lot of different enemies, to where like there are certain bosses that you can beat by throwing tents on them to put them to sleep or poison them or mute them. You've got all these weird things. You've got enemies that are vulnerable to stuff like soft or potions or Phoenix Downs, to where if you know what an enemy is supposed to be, you can kind of guesstimate what kind of items would kill them. You've got weird ways to grind, like the friendly monsters that give you a ton of money. You've got the Ragtime Mouse that lets you answer these trivia questions and get stuff.
You get a ton of AP for those, I think, yeah?
Yeah, you get a ton of items just by exploring the world and digging and playing the Chocobo side quest. Like, all that stuff can get you super cool limited items. And all of those different systems take characters that might be pretty boilerplate, kind of generic Final Fantasy characters, and tweak them to make them something more. And I think that that's super compelling for the game. And obviously, like, there's the whole story component that we've talked about for so long. I don't want to make the argument again. Like, I think it's just one of the most optimistic games that simultaneously deals with a very difficult topic. And so I think that that's worth acknowledging. So, Billy, has that convinced you? Because Inside is the game I would propose to cut next. Personally, I love Inside. Like, it is our game of 2016. Like, I really like Pokemon Snap, and I really like Final Fantasy IX.
I'm cutting Inside next.
Okay.
All right.
So now we have... And does anyone want to make an impassioned speech for Inside? Because it does. I mean, we had it for Game
we've done our speech for it already. I think it's fine. What a weird contest we've amassed for ourselves.
I mean, is it any weirder than last year?
Not really.
Here we are
Pokemon
again, guys.
Snap and Final Fantasy IX.
Face off.
So we've got a game that can be completed in 2 hours, thereabouts. When you take enough pictures of Kinglers.
No, it can't be completed that fast without glitches, because it's literally on rails. You can't play that game fast without clipping out of bounds.
No, dude. You do get the fast forward track or whatever that is.
Okay.
Well,
let me make an argument for why it shouldn't be Pokemon Snap. Just one thing.
Because it's Pokemon Snap.
Well, there's a good reason. But another thing is, the pure joy and fun you mentioned, Pete, and the joy of exploration, that applies. And then you get to the last level.
Oh, fuck.
And it becomes just the worst first-person shooter. You're throwing apples and pester balls at Mew in this fucking clouds, and if you don't hit him with enough apples in time, you have to start the level over. So after all of this, you've taken all these pictures, all these beautiful pictures. You found like the Doug trio in the mountains. You found the Kingler. You found all of these things.
The pincer.
And then you're taken to the sky where there's constellations, and you're throwing. God, those controls are bad. You're throwing apples at a moving target. And when you finally crack it, you take a picture of a Mew. And I assume Professor Oak furiously masturbates to the picture.
I mean, that's the only reasonable
That's
conclusion.
why he wants these pictures. But man, that game ends with a wet fart.
It's true. It's true.
They should have tried to do less.
I'm voting for Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah, I mean, as you probably should.
Pokemon Snap's great.
Look, I didn't enjoy particularly Final Fantasy IX, but I am perfectly happy with it as our choice for Game of our Year. I think it's a better choice than Pokemon Snap, and I think history will look at us more kindly for having selected it over Pokemon Snap.
I think that I need to get over the fact that I couldn't play Final Fantasy IX the way I like playing games. And
you can now. Like, you've got all the time in the world.
I don't have all the time.
Something.
But one day, I could... Gino, let me say, I respect this game more because it is your favorite and I like you as my friend. The fact that this is your favorite game and this game is so impactful to you as a person makes it more valuable to me because you are more valuable to me. And we're not getting super touchy here. Fuck that shit. But just for a second, I wanted to go there.
Aww,
because I know
thank you.
That one of these days, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is going to come up.
And that game's probably going to win the year that we pick
it probably will.
It's probably going to win that one. Which is why I wanted to pick Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for a couple of weeks, and I was like, we can't play those two games in the same year, because the podcast will be 4 hours long, or just of that discussion.
Yeah, I was gonna say this one's already about 4 hours long.
Yeah, that'd be real bad. So I just didn't pick it.
So
just one thing I'd like to throw out with Final Fantasy IX, since it seems to be winning. It did get re-released this year, so it actually picked up some stuff. Like, your ability to even speed through it like that is because of the usability features that were added to it this year when it got re-released. So some of that stuff is a pretty significant upgrade over the PS1 version. Like, the load times are...
Gino, is this where you try to make an argument that it should have been Game of the Year 2016 too?
No, I'm not doing that. I was going to say, I'm not doing that. You're welcome. But if you want to play this game, now is the best time to try and play it, because it holds up well and has a much better, like, I think the PC version's just better. So let's review what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
Game of the Year 2016, Inside.
That's the calendar year, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, calendar year. Best Comedy, Beautiful Joe. Best Drama, Final Fantasy IX. Best Character, Vivi. Best Culturally Inspired Game, Never Alone. Best Action Adventure, Mass Effect. Best Soundtrack, Final Fantasy VII. Prettiest Game, The Witness. Best Performance / Voice Acting, Henry and Delilah from Firewatch. Best Mechanic, Environmental Line Puzzles, The Witness. Billy's Grindfather Award. Oh, wait, we skipped. Best Twist, Brian Goodwin is Dead from Firewatch. Worst Story, Silent Hill 4. Damn you, Silent Hill 4. Billy's Grindfather Award, Fury. Gino's Platypus Award for Game That Should Not Be, Pokemon Snap. The John Paul Sartre
You just say Sartre.
Sartre Memorial Award for Game That Best Expresses the Ultimate Futility of the Human Condition, a.k.a. Pizza Award. Inside. And Game of Our Year 2016, Final Fantasy IX.
We did it.
It's been a long year.
It has.
It's been a considerably longer year than last year, considering we started like May of 2015.
That's a good point.
We've had an entire calendar of 2016. Holy shit, boys!
And we keep pumping these podcasts out.
People keep listening.
We do.
So
thank you,
Finland.
Thank you, all of you people that have inspired us to still be here.
Thank you for that one guy in like Idaho who downloaded, what was it, like 30,000 copies or something?
Yeah, some random person in Indiana downloaded this podcast 700 times.
Thank you.
Like the same handful of podcasts, 700.
I just hope that guy turned them onto like CDs and was like, "Yo, dog, I got these bootleg podcasts."
Dog.
Well, to be fair, it could be 700 people in Indiana, each downloading individually. Who's to say?
Maybe. Yo, what if somebody is like teaching this podcast in some class? Like,
what class?
That's probably not
what
that. That's
possible
probably
class?
not the case.
I don't know. You know, like podcast making 101. And
One day,
just a bunch of fucking
we'll
undergrads had to just listen to us from University of Indiana.
One day we'll get there.
So
one day we'll get there. So thank you, listeners. Remember, if you want to get in touch with the show, if you want to tell us that we did a bad job with our list,
we'd love to hear it.
I will fight you.
Like, first off, it's our list. What the hell? Second of all, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. Drop it in the comment section for this podcast, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. All feedback goes to those places. Thank you, Billy.
Thanks
for joining me on this long podcast. Thank you, Pete, as well.
You are welcome.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. It's been a fantastic year.
It's been excellent.
I look forward to 2017 with two of my best good friends playing video games that we all love.
Some we hate.
And some we don't.
Until Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
Hopefully they put out a sequel next year.
Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood in parentheses remix strikes back.
No, it would be Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood parenthesis. Sometimes you got to break some Eggmans to make an omelet. Close parenthesis.
Gaiden. Yeah.
And then and thank you for that. With that, I think we're gonna end the podcast. I love that this was a lot less contentious than last year. I think. I think the decision to just make sure that like the good games were not immediately excised, so that we were having a bum fight between Undertale and Baldur's Story really saved us here.
I think you're right.
I feel like my attempts at fighting for my games failed a lot more this year, but I feel like the competition was actually a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
We had a longer year.
Yeah, we did.
And so, here's to many more. Till next time, peace!